Welcome to the What is Truth podcast. I am Wheezy, and I am waiting on my guests. One of them is on the line, Mr. Billy Ray. What's up, my man? Oh, you you need a one second. All right, one. Let me. I put you on mute, bro. Don't worry. We're waiting on uh, John. He messaged me that he was not dodging. He's just running late. So I'm hoping that's the case. That's the thing when you do live shows, though. You plan and sometimes things happen. So hopefully this we just have to wait a few minutes for John to come up and we will be up and running. Oh, there you are. Okay, I got you. What's up, Billy?
Yo, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you.
You can hear me?
You're
I
good?
can't hear you.
Yeah. Check your
I don't
your
know.
headset on the settings. Make sure it's on the right headset. So again, this is one of those things of doing a live show. Things come up unexpectedly, but I suppose we can cover what I wanted to cover on the show, anyways. And maybe I need to send him a message. Yeah, I could hear your volume, but he can't hear us. So Billy Ray's here, but he needs to get his headset straightened out, and then he'll be good. You, I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Wasn't on mute before, so now you can hear me now, right?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
I'm just not using my roadcaster. It's not picking you up for some reason.
Did you put it on the settings on the StreamYard at the very bottom?
Yeah, I do it all the time. Let me see. I don't know what the hell. This thing is acting up. It's a brand new one too. Well, it's a year old.
Yeah. You're good. Yeah, I can hear you, but you can't hear me?
I can hear you still. But
okay.
My board is booting up. Let's see if I still hear you. I need to hear you through my headphones.
Yeah. Yeah, no worries. I was just telling people that that's the thing that happens sometimes with live shows. Things happen. And John said he's not dodging. He will pop up. Yeah, this was just a little bit of background for those tuning in. There you go.
That would help.
Billy didn't have his headset jack plugged in. That's jacked up, man. That's jacked up. Let's see. I did. Okay. So this was a few months in the making. This little slash debate discussion between myself and John, and it came about. One of our mutual friends had made a post on Twitter.
Hey,
basically,
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, bro.
All right, beautiful. So we're good to go. How you doing? Sorry about the the tech issues on my end, and I'm sick. My voice is going in and out. So heads up on that.
You're good, man. Yeah, you and I chatted a couple times this week while at work, talking a little shit here and there. I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's I was just telling people that this discussion was actually in the works for a few months now, and it came about. I don't remember exactly what the tweet said, but one of our mutual friends, who will remain nameless because I don't want to name and shame, made a tweet, and they were kind of it was kind of like laughing at people that didn't believe in God and stuff like that. And then I made a remark. I go, well, that's kind of a weird generalization, given that Christians do this and this and that. And then it started to get a little more serious, the little back and forth. And I go, dude, let's have a debate. Come on my show. Let's talk about this. And he didn't want to do it. So he said, well, how about you debate John? And I go, bring him on. I'm down. And that never materialized. We scheduled a date, didn't materialize. Then it got postponed, never materialized. So this is the third attempt. They say the third time is the charm, but so far not looking good. Oh, I can't hear you, bro. Hey, I can't hear you.
There you go. Now you can
There
hear
you
me.
go. Yeah,
Yeah,
I got
say
you.
he better show up, man. Otherwise, he's not going to hear the end of it, man.
Yeah. This is the third time. I let the record show that this is the third time. So, and I told you I've got my A game. So those that have been following me probably already know my stance on religious issues. If you are new, and welcome all the new listeners, I may alienate some of y'all if you guys aren't ready for this. So I apologize in advance. But the name of the show is What is Truth? At the end of the day, we are all in that quest of searching for truth. For some people, it is the Bible, it is faith. For some, it's the Quran. For some, it's the Torah. For some, it's Hindu scripts. For some, it's the belief in Odin. Pick your flavor.
Odinism.
Odinism. And so we're all in that quest in search of truth. And so, to be honest with everyone listening right now, I've wanted this conversation for a long time, for many years now.
Right.
But I've self-censored because I know that a lot of the people that tune in are religious, and I didn't want to offend or piss anyone off. And that is not my intention tonight at all. But you need to have these discussions. You need to ask the questions. And if your faith is strong, it's no different than people that question the vaccine or question the mandates, and they were censored. Why? If your policies make so much sense, why censor these voices? And so if we can't ask these kind of questions, why is your faith not strong enough to handle these questions? Like that's what it gets down to.
Well, my biggest issue with a lot of it is that and I respect everybody. I mean everybody's beliefs, right? I respect them as far as in a religious sense, you know. I have a lot of respect for the Muslim faith. I have a lot of respect for Buddhists, man. I have a lot of respect for, you name it, you know. I'm like, all right, Judaism, you know. I consider myself a Christian, you know, but I realize where I come from and why I believe these things. Regardless, it's a belief, right? It's what I believe, right? And some of my beliefs stray away from what the Bible says, you know. And the thing that gets me about hardcore Christians is that they and this is not all Christians. I realize I'm making a generalization here, like, so I'm not speaking to everybody, but they fail to understand that other people have different perspectives, right? They fail to understand that other people come from different places and they are in the right all the time, right? What they're saying is the truth. And that is all, right? There's no room for questioning. And if you do question, you're going to hell, or you're wrong and you're going to hell, right? And those are the things that I really have a bit of an issue with, you know. But I'm open to having the conversation, but 9 times out of 10, I realize that I end up pissing the other person off. I'm not pissed. I'm fine. Like, I'm like, okay, tell me, you know, let's have the conversation. But the other person gets really pissed when you challenge their beliefs in any way, and I don't know if that's the way it was meant to be, you know. Um, I was thinking about it today, and I've said this many times on my own podcast and my own broadcast, but I was thinking about it today for some reason. I forgot why it came up, but um, and I might have mentioned it the last time you and I were together, Wheezy. I'm not sure, but like it's like having a bird, right? Like you have a bird in a cage. As soon as you open that door, that bird's gonna fly away and take off. It's not your bird, right? You want the bird that you're gonna leave the door open and the window open, but that bird remains. It's loyal to you. So to put it in a way that it's more relatable, it's like your wife. Do you want to keep your wife under lock and key, and she's there, she's with you out of fear because you're gonna kill her or something like that, or you're hiding her away from the rest of the world, or do you want somebody that's with you because they want to be with you? So the door's wide open, but they want to be with you. They don't need to be with you, right? They're not forced to be with you. They want to be with you. And I feel like it's the same way. I want to be with God, and God wants me to be with Him, or it, or she, whatever you think that is. And that's the way I look at it. That's my philosophy and things. Like I don't want anybody to be with me because they feel they have to be. I want them to be with me because they want to be, because they see the value in me and they want to be with me. So this whole, the fear behind it is like, if you're not with God, you're going to hell. That's the trap. You're going to hell. You're going to, well, I guess I better get in line. Well, so if hell, remove hell from the equation, what would you do? Would you get in line, or would you go ahead and do whatever it is you were going to do? And does God really want that? Right. I don't know. I'm just here.
Yeah.
That's all.
And these are all valid questions. I mean, I grew up, in a I grew up Catholic, and my parents were not your average Catholic that just goes to mass on special holidays or special events. I mean, they practically lived at church. Monday Bible study classes, Tuesday rosary, Wednesday more Bible classes, and Friday they have prayer group. And then they taught catechism. So they practically lived at church. And I grew up believing a lot of these things. And I think, once I really started reading the Bible and I came up across verse after verse after verse of really messed up stuff, there's a reason why there's a kid's Bible. Because some of the stuff in the Bible is really fucked up. And just an example, there's one part of the Bible where they're talking about this prostitute who's banging out all kinds of dudes, and she lusts for dudes that had genitals as big as donkeys.
Damn.
This is in the Bible. And then in Genesis 9:10, where God kills Onan for spilling his jizz on the ground instead of inside his sister-in-law.
Right.
I was reading these verses. You wouldn't want your kid reading these verses, would you? These are pornographic, for lack of a better term, verses. And so the irony is never lost on me when I see people say, "Oh, you can't be reading this in schools and stuff." I'm like, I agree with you, but have you read your own Bible?
Yeah.
Have you read? Would you have your kids read these passages? Because you're so up on arms on that stuff, and I agree with you, but you're being hypocritical if you're ignoring this other shit. That
And what's happening is, and again, I am a Christian, right? But what's happening is we are letting it rule especially here in the United States, we're letting it rule the country, and losing sight of actual freedom, right? Losing sight of it. It's the way the Christian, in particular in the Christian right, it's the way they see it. That is the best way, and it is the only way. And as long as their rights are protected, everybody else, their rights can be violated. You know, their rights can go to hell, for lack of a better term. You know, and that's what's going on here. In particular, in the conservative right, it's a psychological operation that's turned a lot of these people into a cult. It's a cult like state, and limiting the freedoms of other Americans that may not think the way they think, right? There was a separation of church and state for a reason, you know, but this is becoming intertwined more and more and more as time goes by, and that's a problem. And if you're, and I know here, especially in conspiracy circles and in the alternative media, most people that come to this type of show and know about the knowledge lean heavily on the right and are Christian, and they talk about freedom, right? But they don't respect the freedom of the other man that sees it differently. It's insane, you know. It really is. So we need to look in the mirror and really think about freedom, really think about truth, you know, and be honest with ourselves. Why can't we be honest with ourselves about these sort of things, and be honest with one another and have conversations and respect people and respect their beliefs, right? As long as they're not hurting anybody else, of course, right? Then that whole question comes into view with abortion and all this other stuff. And once the state is telling you what to do, it's a problem. Once, in my opinion, when the state is telling you what to do with your body, it is a problem. And we talk about it here with the vaccine all the time, right? My body, my choice. And it's true, right? I'm not saying I agree with abortion, but if somebody else wants to go do it, that's between them and God. It has nothing to do with me. It's just a reality of where we live. Because if we infringe on their right to do certain things, then they get the right to infringe on us. And what did they do? They turned around and stuffed us with vaccines, right? That we didn't necessarily want. That's because we don't know what freedom is, and we don't respect it. If we don't know what it is, how can we protect it? We have no idea what it is. And unfortunately, the people, the good people, the well-meaning people of the right, the Christian right, are being targeted and used for such purposes, in my humble opinion. What's up, Tom Cooper? How you doing, buddy? And number 6. What's up, 6? Hit me up, man. What's going on? It's been a bit.
Here's the
I'm
question
supposed
for
to see
you.
Rob Van Dam next week. I am not kidding. So hit me up. I don't know if it'll happen. I'm supposed to go up to Syracuse, New York, and chill with my guy Ben Hameen, who's opening up a dispensary up there. You know, so
there you go.
One guy, Mr. Rob Van Dam, will be there. You know, so just saying. I don't know if I'll make it up, but I'm supposed to.
Yeah, I mean,
anyway, sorry, Weezy. I strayed off the path. Go ahead, buddy.
No, you give me shout outs, bro. Fucking, you haven't do it, bro. This is I used to open up all the shows giving shout outs, and then I kind of stepped away. So I mean, might as well start giving shout outs. Hell yeah.
Right. And Missy, what's up, Missy? How you doing? Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, Missy, she's fucking awesome. Marion G of G's, another awesome person. Secret Squirrel. They've been following me for many, many years.
Secret Squirrel. Who's Secret Squirrel? Is he here?
Yeah, she's in the YouTube chat.
That's Secret Squirrel. Secret Squirrel was from a podcast, man, the Fantasy Focus podcast. ESPN. I haven't listened to them in a bit, man. But I remember the name when it said.
I think that's just her name. Because I know her. Yeah, she's from Scotland.
Dope.
Yeah.
That's not how you do it out there. All right, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, shout out to them. Awesome mods. Shout out to Hev. Hev is back. She said this time she's gonna behave.
What up, Hev?
No, we didn't have no issue with her last time.
No issue
It was good
whatsoever.
to have little disagreements. But I wanted to touch on the abortion thing because these are some of the things that aren't said out loud in the conspiracy world. And I think this is what prompted me to question that tweet that I saw from a mutual friend of John and I's.
You must tell me who this is if you want to tell me off here.
I'll tell you. Yeah, I'll tell you later on. But you know, he's a young Christian.
He's stuck in traffic, by the way.
Okay.
I texted him excuses.
I mean, the abortion thing is one of those things again where I mentioned, you know, like people getting up in arms for some of the stuff they're hearing in school that are bad. You know, kids shouldn't be learning. And then I gave the example of certain Bible passages that kids shouldn't be reading either. And the same thing, it's the same idea that crosses my mind when it comes to abortion. I, like you, I don't agree with abortion. I mean, this thing by the far lefty saying that a baby is not a baby until it comes out of the womb is complete horseshit.
Yeah, it's nonsense.
At the same time, I'm on the same wavelength that you just said. Once you start taking rights and you keep taking, the government keeps taking, they never give back rights. Once you give away those rights, they just keep taking more. You give an inch, they'll take a fucking foot. And that happens over and over again. So when it comes to abortion, I'm with you. Yeah. I don't agree with it, but who am I to infringe upon their decisions? And some of those decisions could be because of a horrible situation.
Right.
Definitely, conservative Republicans chiefly like to show that one far lefty that brags about having abortions because that's a good poster child.
Yeah.
But let's not avoid the real situations when things happen to that person. Maybe there was violations involved, other things involved. And you're going to tell them they can't do what they want to do in this quote unquote free country.
Right.
And the same thing goes with freedom of speech. You hear these people, some of these people that will say, I'm for freedom of speech. Freedom of speech, freedom of speech. And then if someone wants to put a statue of Baphomet or build a satanic church, they lose their minds. I thought you were for freedom of speech, bro. Yeah. It's like you guys are no different than the far left, you know? So the far right, far left, it's like my boy Freddie, who's in the live chat says, it's a horseshoe. We like to think that the left and the right is just one flat bar. Polar opposites are completely different, but it's really a horseshoe where the both ends are closer alike than they are different.
Absolutely.
And so the same, you know, my body, my choice. If you're on the left, when it comes to vaccines, you sound like a Republican.
Right.
If it's about abortion, then you sound like a libtard. Like it just. They both sides flip-flop all the time.
All the time.
It's
selfishness.
Consistency, man.
Right. It's selfishness, and it's really a lack of understanding of true freedom, of actual freedom. Right. And respect. Right. Respecting for other people's ideas. This doesn't exist. It's not a thing. Well, it does. It does exist. I'm not saying it doesn't. I mean, but largely it's not a thing for the majority of the American public, and I dare say the people around the world most likely. But here in America, there is no respect for freedom. How can we be free if we don't know what freedom is? The land of the free has no idea what freedom is, right? It's as long as they're free, it's freedom. It doesn't matter about everybody else. Go ahead, Weezy.
I mean, I was talking to my buddy, shout out to Al. He's a person that I know I worked with, and I spoke with him on the phone. I think it was yesterday, and I told him I was going to give him a shout out because it's rare that people that you know actually like your shows or follows you. and most of the people that follow me and listen to me are complete strangers to me, people I've never met in real life, and I guess that's just how it works. But Big Al is an exception to that. He's someone that I worked with many hours doing garbage. Uh, we did work many hours together. We had debates. He was very conservative. I was at the time very liberal, and this was before 2020, before the left got even loonier. Um, and we would have debates on gun ownership, on this and that, and sometimes they would get heated. But at the end of the day, we respected each other, and I learned a lot from him, and I'm sure he learned a lot from me. But it's one of those things that if you don't have discussions, and sometimes they can get here, you're just gonna be living in echo chambers.
Yeah, man.
You don't have to agree. Like, this is what I want to preface people today with. Some of the views I may say you may completely disagree with me on. You may be rooting against me tonight, and this is your hall pass. You can root against me. Like, I never want anyone to feel that I'm telling you how y'all to think. I want everyone to think for the goddamn selves.
Right.
At the end of the day, you reach the most logical. This is why I feel about faith and religion, because I explored my own thoughts, my own opinions. Now, my parents would say that was Satan using my thoughts,
right,
and my curiosity. That was Satan trying to steer me away. Okay, I don't buy that shit. It's just,
neither do I.
I'm gonna go with what makes the most sense to me, whether it's with subjects on faith and religion or vaccines and mandates. I'm going to go with what makes the most logical sense each and every time. I'm not going to be beholden to fear tactics, either by a religious institution or by a government institution. This is where I almost feel like at times, like when I said this last week, but when I first started the show, I didn't know where I was going to fit in, man. Like, I go, I don't believe this. I don't believe that. I don't align with this on this subject. I don't align with that on that subject. I'm going to do my show. No one's going to want to listen to my ass because my views are very different. They're my own views. I don't go along with what everyone else is thinking at the moment, just because it's popular, just because it's in. I'm going to think for myself. And sometimes maybe my views may agree with some of these mainstream views at times, and that's just what it is, or was with popular.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
It's going to vary differently.
Right. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Let me show you what I listened to. Right? Whenever we had this conversation, I was texting John just now, but let me go to my podcast and show you what I listened to. And people be like, "Oh, like, why are you listening to that?" Well, I like to know. Hold on, let me see what we got here. See what I can see. Can you see it? Or is it bad?
It's blurry as hell.
All right. Well, one of them is I got Isaac Weishaupt there, of course, but I got Tucker Carlson there, and I hate Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
Steve Bannon's War Room is right next to the what is it? Trump Trials by NPR. NPR, the libtard of the libtards. All right.
Yeah.
Next to Steve Bannon's War Room, the rightest of the right. I mean, the farthest of the right you could possibly get. These guys are the freaking Trump tards, Trump sycophants. I mean, you name it.
Let me tell you something before I forget.
Yeah.
Steve Bannon wrote speeches for the Hillary Clinton campaign way back in the fucking day, bro.
I didn't even know that, but I believe it.
And I just found out this week, and I thought about you immediately because of the whole Cambridge Analytica. I'm like,
yeah,
it doesn't even surprise me at this moment in time, bro.
It's disgusting.
Anyways, go on.
Democracy Now, right? Which everybody should be listening to straight up, whether you agree with it or not. It's very important news, man. I got my guys down here, Neil Sanders. Some dare call it conspiracy. That's going to trigger any conspiracy theorist, but you should listen. More stuff. The Influence Continuum is dope. It's a dope podcast. It's about mind control and the cults. It was my guy Tony and me all the way down there because I haven't updated the podcast in a bit. So I'm all.
Hey, I didn't see the What is Truth podcast. What the fuck?
You're
bro?
on here? I watch you here on Rockfin.
Yeah. I'm on
Let me go do that now.
podcast platforms. Yeah.
What is truth? I'll put that down there now.
And while you're there, throwing them damn reviews, god damn it.
Let me do that.
Yeah,
all right.
it's
what do you want to talk about in the meantime until this guy gets here, man? I mean, we can.
Well, I like what we're talking about right now because it's kind of laying down the foundation for when he does get here, and people are already getting to feel. Oh shit! Hell yeah! I follow you. I don't have Apple iTunes, so I follow you on Podcast Addict. Shout out to those people that listen on Podcast Addict. I didn't even know there was a small little following there. And you guys can leave reviews there on Podcast Addict as well. It's not just Apple and Spotify. Podcast Addict allows for reviews. So there's already
I just gave you 5 stars. The latest review says, interesting and articulate. I also like his Mexican accent. Fantastic.
Right. Yeah. Well, did you read the other? No. Someone gave me a 1-star review, and it was that
we don't acknowledge those.
Yeah, that pendejo.
We don't talk about those.
That pendejo YouTuber. That if you read the comment, like the way the comment's written, the stuff they hint at, I'm like, oh, it's clearly that fucking payaso. It's hilarious to me. Someone with supposedly 1 million subscribers still like harasses me. I don't have nowhere near that on the as far as followers, and this clown is still talking shit. Right. But I mean, the thing is, this conversation is going to be heavy once John gets here. It's going to get heavy. Some people are going to get triggered. So I just want to lay down the foundation and give a trigger warning. I don't mean this in a derogatory way. I don't mean this in a way to piss anyone off. If religion and faith is really dear to you, I suggest just stop, hit the stop button and catch the next episode, because it's going to get heavy. And I'm not trying to piss people off. It's just what is truth at the end of the day. And it's going to get heavy. And so this is my warning to y'all. If you feel like you're going to get triggered, just hit stop, catch the next episode. And it's all good. No hard feelings.
John is my boy, right? John is my dude. It's my friend. Wheezy, I just recently met. We're pretty cool though. I would side with Wheezy on the majority of this. Wheezy's gonna sound just like me arguing here, because that's what I have these arguments with John off air all the time. And John's a very smart guy. I don't agree with him on the majority of this. I just do not agree with him. But John means well. I know this, right? I know this, and he tries to hit me over the head because he legit doesn't want me to go to hell, right? He thinks I'm going to hell, because I don't follow the Bible to the T, right? So I am going to sit back and try to be as fair and impartial as possible. But John knows my deal. John knows my views. He knows how I feel about it. And you can make the thing is, right, for believers. There he is. I was about to say, God. I was about to say, boy, let me tell you. It is 6:37 here in New York City, bro.
I can't hear you, bro.
You're muted.
We heard you, like, as soon as you came in the stream, we heard you, and then your audio went away.
Talk.
Testing.
I barely hear you, man. Raise up your volume.
My volume's all the way up. There's no problems at all.
That's perfect right there.
Okay. Yeah. I'm so sorry for being late. I had to pick up my grandmother-in-law from the hospital. My wife's working. Mm-hmm. And so it took forever for her to be discharged. And then driving here, it's like almost like it didn't coming here and my microphone didn't work. It's like I don't know, Satan's messing with me or what at this point, because on the way home, there was an accident. So I got stuck behind that. So then I was like, "Oh man, this is horrible." Weezy's thinking I'm not gonna be here again, you know. And so
Mhm.
I
Third time is a
apologize.
charm, John.
I was telling Billy, I was like, I'm coming,
I
I'll
was
be there.
I was
You know, if
telling
I have to,
Weezy, I was
so I was
telling
like,
Weezy, I was like, if John doesn't make it, he's not going to hear the end of it.
I'm
I'm
here,
like,
I'm here, I'm here, I'm finally here. I
Nah,
apologize.
you're good, bro.
Yeah.
Hey, so you're here. Let's, if you could introduce yourself. So, for those people just tuning in, I had Billy and I had a conversation a couple episodes ago. Go back through the playlist, and so you will be well acquainted. Most of the audience will be acquainted with Billy Ray now, but John, there's probably folks that would love to know more about you. If you can give us a little background, my man.
Yes, of course. I used to run the We Read the Documents YouTube channel, but I've been struck off of YouTube twice. So I have a backup video, a backup channel on YouTube now, where I just pull the videos as soon as I record them and put them up on Odyssey. I'm an investigative journalist. I'm a born again Christian. I've researched the Finders, the Council for National Policy, um, uh, various other topics. I also run Fix Your Gut. I'm a digestive health coach. I've been doing that for more than 10 years. And I I guess I was raised in a Christian household. My father was a conspiracy theorist. Back when conspiracy theorists really got ridiculed for being conspiracy theorists, I grew up listening to Bill Cooper and Coast to Coast AM. My father didn't like Alex Jones. He never really trusted him, never really liked him. You know, but I adopted the politics of my grandfather, who was a neoconservative. So I was very high, you know, strong, you know, like a Zionist, conservative at the time after 9/11, growing up in Fayetteville, North Carolina, you know, all American city, Fort Bragg, you know, and everything. And it wasn't until I heard Alex Jones on Coast to Coast AM on December, sometimes I don't remember exact day it was, but it was during December of 2007, where he was talking about how 9/11 was an inside job to George Norrie and breaking down why it was. And I was like, well, hold up. I remember my dad, you know, not, you know, and my dad passed away in 2004. My dad, you know, believing 9/11 was an inside job and talking, you know, about it and everything like that, right? And stuff. And Bill Cooper talking about it. I remember that when I was, you know, when I was a teenager. And so I was like, okay, so some of this stuff started to click, right? And then that from there was when I started researching and started, you know, really looking at the world very differently. And I was a New Ager, a Gnostic for many, many years. I became born again around sometime around 2019. You know, I've been a born again Christian ever since, and kind of, and you can see the shifting of my, you know, shows from being parapolitical, you know, at the start of my channel to more, you know, outspoken in, you know, in my faith now later as I progress through the years. But that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
That's awesome, man. So, before you came on, I was giving Billy a little background on how you and I, we were supposed to have this chat like a few months back, but things didn't happen. And I can't remember exactly what the Twitter post was. I didn't name the person. I don't know if you remember.
Not offhand.
Yeah, I told Billy I'll tell him later. I didn't want to name and shame, but this person made I can't even remember what the Twitter post was about, but it was something about like atheists, blah, 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 and Christians got it right. And I just made a comment, and it started getting a little touchy. I go, dude, let's talk about it on my show.
Yeah.
And he quickly ran away from that, and that's when he name dropped you into the comments. And I go, I'll talk to John. Hell yeah. I'll talk to. I feel strongly about my positions, and I feel confident in them. And I often tell people, when I tell someone I want to debate them, is because I've studied the subject matter at length. I know it in depth, you know, and I love a good debate, and it doesn't have to be a religious debate all the time. I had a
course.
debate with an astrophotographer a few months ago. Astrophotographer, his dad or grandpa worked for NASA or some bullshit like that. Dude had 300,000 Twitter followers. And I asked him to debate the moon landing. I don't have any college education. I'm just a garbage man.
I don't have any
And
college education either. So
there you go. But what I mean, the point is that I felt comfortable talking to a college, quote unquote, educated man on the NASA moon landings, and I thought I did all right. And so I prefaced before you came on, like, there's probably going to be quite a few people that have faith that follow me. Quite a few. I don't know what percentage of it. Maybe it's a few. And I already told people, if you're going to get easily triggered by some of the things I may say, press stop and skip it, because I don't mean to anger anyone. The name of the show is What is Truth, because at the end of the day, we are all in search of truth. Some of us may be a little bit closer than others, but at the end of the day, we're all in that same journey. And so to get to that thing that we call truth, we have to have these discussions, these hard discussions. I've wanted a discussion like this for a long time, but I self-censored out of fear of losing, quote unquote, followers and subscribers, or people judging me in a different light because of my particular views. And so I self-censored. I was like, I got to keep my mouth shut. And I think that one particular post, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to shut up about this. I'm going to call some of the hypocritical stances out when I see them, because I don't know. I guess I sometimes have that bad habit of being outspoken when I see something that I disagree with.
you and me
But
both.
I mean, that's just in a nutshell my a little bit of the stance. I don't know where you guys or how, what format we should take this conversation or chat, or maybe just keep it casual the whole time through and just like
I
this,
mean, I mean, I figured no, if formal debate. I hate formal debates, to be honest with you. Like, I hate them. Like, I despise the structure. I guess it's my personality. I just despise the structure of a debate. But a conversation, I think I think more can be learned from a conversation than a formal debate, because all formal debating is who's the best rhetorician. It's like, and so I think discussion more, in my opinion anyway, more thoughts could be presented, and you can have a better dialogue than a formal, opening statement, you know, body, then cross-examine. I mean, if you want to do it that way, we can. I don't
no,
really like that way.
I agree with you. And you know, I didn't know much about your work prior to that, someone name dropping you. And afterwards, I started it's kind of like when you don't know what a Ford Mustang is, and then once you know what a Ford Mustang is, you start seeing them everywhere. That's what happened with you. Like, I'm like, oh shit, he's on tinfoil hat. Oh shit, he's on William Ramsey's show. Oh shit, I started seeing you everywhere. So you've been on a lot of shows, and I've caught a lot of your shows. And I said this to Billy Ray last time, that I probably agree with 90% of everything else he says. The one biggest disagreement is probably this, the question of faith. And so a formal debate, I agree, it can go down to who has the best word salads, but I think a lot of times in a good debate, you can kind of see who's being honest with their arguments and who is bullshitting and covering up with nonsense. You can sense a lot of that if you're looking for it. And so that's how you can tell who's doing a better job in a debate. It doesn't matter if one is screaming and the other one is more quiet. You can get a lot of cues. So I do like debates, but I think casual, given the nature that I've watched you before, and then Billy Ray loves you to death, man. He's always talking highly of you. There, there's no need to have like, oh yeah, let's put on our umpire jerseys and duke it out that way. No, man, a casual conversation I think is just fine, and I think this is what I put in the description, this is going to be food for thought, no matter if you side more ideologically speaking on this issue with John or with me. It doesn't matter. I mean, I think there'll be stuff to learn for everyone.
All right. So we can start it off like this. Wheezy can just go ahead and just summarize what it is about John's position that you do not agree with, and we can start from there, right? You can talk about your position in the context of that, but what is it that John says that you don't agree with, and then we can start off and go from there.
I think what the biggest disagreement. So I had Terry Wolf on. Great show. A lot of people love that show. I got a lot of positive feedback. I don't know if you're familiar with Terry Wolf's work. Yeah. And super intelligent guy. And he sees a lot of psyops that I agree with as well. But I when he was talking, whenever I have a guest, even if I may disagree with them, I try not to butt up against a lot of their beliefs because they're my guests. I need to be respectful of that and let them say their piece. But and I don't know, John, if you probably do you see a lot of do you agree with a lot of what Terry Wolf's for example spiritual conclusions are? And that would better
yes and no. I mean, I would consider myself, as Billy would call me, as an evangelical Christian.
Evangelical.
So,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's important to know because, and I'll probably reference back to this throughout the conversation, but there's so many different flavors of Christianity. I mean, even in Islam, everyone thinks Islam is just one monolith. There's tons and tons of different sectarian beliefs in Islam. Same thing in Judaism. Not all Jews are Zionists. There's Jews that are hardcore anti-Zionists. And in the Christian world, you have Catholics, you have Orthodox Catholics, you have Protestants of all likes and flavors, you have Mormons, although some Christians will say they're not Christians. You have Baptists, you have all kinds. So, but at the end of it, there are some key elements that I guess you would say are Christian. So I guess my belief, getting back to Billy's question, my issue is with, personally, I don't have a problem with anyone believing whatever they want. My biggest concern comes in with, are you infringing on another person's well-being? That's where I have an issue with. And it always comes down to that. Are you infringing? Are you legislating laws? Are you doing this? And are you infringing on other person's well-being? So you can believe whatever you want. My issue is with this. Sometimes this Christian dogma reminds me a lot of what the Faucian science believers, there's a lot of overlap and a lot of similarities, in my opinion, in that the government and religious institutions will use fear to get people to get into compliance. And in my opinion, religious institutions and governments will use propaganda and nonsense storylines to further promote that fear porn that's shoved down our throats. And so I don't know if that's the answer you were looking for, but that's kind of in my bio, on my description on my Odyssey channel and other places. But yeah, I just don't trust either government or religious institutions. I want to think for myself. I don't need ancient scrolls or scripts filled with tons of errors and edits, translations to tell me how to live my life in 2024, because a lot of those practices are not being practiced today in 2024 for a very clear reason. And so I would say that that's probably I don't know if that answers your question.
What
Billy,
was the excuse me, what was the issue that went down on Twitter that prompted you to want to debate that gentleman and then John getting involved? What was that specifically?
That's exactly what I just said about the governments and religious institutions being the same.
Mhm.
I need to find out the tweet, but it was something along the lines like, people that have faith are better than this and that.
There you
And then I just called it out. I'm like, no, it's the same shit.
Mhm.
And that's what prompted it.
I
So
wonder if it was
peop-
I wonder if it was Jack Allen. Um,
I
okay,
have no comment.
I see a
okay,
smile there, man.
okay, Wheezy. So a couple of things. One, um, I mean, I believe there's a born again body of believers in Christ that is it as far as his denominations are concerned, it exceeds all those. Okay, I think it may be lessened in certain denominations like Catholic and Orthodox, but I believe that there are born again Christians within those faiths that need to come out of it. Okay, so technically, I would consider myself to be a free will Baptist. Okay, if I had to put myself, if I had to give myself a label. Now, that being said, I'm against Christian nationalism. As a free will Baptist, I believe in soul liberty, or what is commonly known as the separation of church and state. So I believe that you can legislate all you want to, but that's not really going to make the difference. Which makes the difference is people actually becoming born again, actually becoming indwelled with the Holy Spirit. Okay. So you can legislate all you want to, all right? But that's not like, again, when they struck down the abortion law. Now I myself am pro-life, but what is that? It doesn't really do anything. It's not changing people's hearts. They're not coming to the Lord. They're not changing. That's what repentance is a change of mindset. Okay. So that's the same thing that I told Tripoli. So, as far as the separation of church and state, I agree with you. I'm against Christian nationalism. I actually think that the Christian nationalists are going to put me to death. Okay. They've done before. The Baptists are separate from the Protestants. The Protestants killed the Baptists. Okay. So in that regard, I would agree. Now, to your point of the Bible's outdated, and you didn't directly say that, but to your point of like, why do I need a book to get my own state of morality? Okay. Now, I think our personalities are probably very similar, I would assume, after listening to you. And I think that you prize logic very highly, okay, which I do as an INTP. Okay, TI hero. It's like the highest thing that I prize is my own thinking, my own logic. Okay. So the hardest scripture for an INTP to overcome and it's in Proverbs, is to not lean into my own understanding, which is what my flesh wants, is to lean on to God's understanding. Okay. So as a Gnostic, and at the time I considered myself also to be a libertarian, you and I, where you are now, and I'm not putting you down by any stretch of imagination by saying that, you and I would have gotten perfectly along as far as that mindset 5 years ago. But the moment and again, it took me a year. I fought it tooth and nail, thinking I knew that my morality, what I base it off of, my ethics, my logic was better than the creators. I knew more that, and that the Bible was just a set of fables. It was just a set of fairy tales that could be esoterically, through hidden or secret knowledge, could be figured out. Okay. And through certain things that I realized, for example, that the Nag Hammadi library scrolls were, the translation was funded and the propagation was pushed by the Rockefeller family. So modern Gnosticism, at least in the past 80 years, that's infiltrated and permeated conspiracy culture, directly could tie back to the Rockefeller family. And it was stuff like that where I learned that you'll say there's 1 million biblical translations. And again, you're trying to determine what is truth. That's your podcast, right? And so was I, right? And, most people they'll believe that Plato existed, for example. Okay. And that Plato wrote the Republic. But how many copies of the Republic do we have? And how long after Plato supposedly lived were those copies written? And there's not a lot. And it's within 500 to 1,000 years, roughly, once you start digging in. So with the New Testament, for example, there's more copies than even the document that we have the most copy of, which is the Iliad, which is Homer's. And the New Testament was roughly written between roughly early as 45, sometimes people say 50 AD to as late as 100 AD. And if you line up all the translations of the New Testament, okay, like all the copies of the text, they're all about 99.5%, there's within a very slight and practical problem, possibility of error, that they all line up. Now, granted, there's various translations, whether it's the King James Version, in the New International Version, the New American Standard Bible, the Message. I get all that. But the language of it itself, what the early Christians believed from 33 AD to now, as far as what is taught and what is actually in the Bible, we have a chain that shows, that it is consistent. And it was that and more evidence that I came across that made me go, okay, I believe this to be true. Now, again, the stereotypical, and there is truth to this, I'm not going to say there's not, that the unbelief, if you don't believe in God, obviously, unbelief is the only, pride initially is the only unforgivable sin in which, you will be judged and cast in, hell for all eternity for. Most atheists and some agnostics will say, out of fear of that is the reason why I serve God. Yes, I do fear the one who could cast me into hellfire, but I revere him. I am a Christian, and the things that I do for the Father is primarily motivated out of love. My love for Jesus and my love for God. So hopefully that answers and I'm pretty sure, I don't think there's anything today that I can tell you that's different than anything that you've researched. I really don't. I don't. But I'm going to tell you that there might be, the only thing I might be able to give you, maybe, which is subjective in of itself, okay, my reasoning why I believe the things that I do. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Billy
Because
is over there texting.
No, I'm good. I'm listening. I thought you, excuse me. I thought you were going to jump in and say something.
Well,
But
I do have a couple of points
Go
to
ahead.
what John just said regarding the Bible. The oldest Bible that we have. Do you know how old the oldest Bible in existence is, John?
Are we talking about the Old
The
Testament?
oldest complete Bible.
As far as the canonized version, right? So which one are we
Yeah,
going to? So which one
I
are we
would
going to
say that's a
discuss?
Bible. I'm not talking about just
So which one are we going to?
scrolls.
I mean the actual
fully
one that
assembled one.
The canonized. But
right,
I mean,
I would think it's the canonized version, right? That's the
yeah,
Bible.
but what are
as
we
we
talking
know it.
about? Marcion, the Gnostics canon, who was one of the first people to actually make a canon, even though I obviously disagree with his canon. There's reasoning why that is. But where are we talking of like how far back are we going as far as the New
oldest
Testament is
Bible
concerned?
is in Ethiopia. and it's dated around, I think, the 3rd or 4th century AD. That's the oldest Bible. So one of the questions that I had to come across with, because I was very devout, I taught Bible classes. I read the Bible. To take your name, I've read the document. One of the recurring themes was who put because I hear a lot of people that are not Catholic, Baptist, evangelical say that the Catholics, and I'm not saying you say this, maybe you do, but the Catholic Church is the whore of Babylon, and the Catholics don't have it right. They're not real Christians. I've heard
Well, I
those
believe,
things.
well, to that effect, I believe the whore of Babylon, the harlot, is Jerusalem in eschatological terms. So I would disagree
Yeah.
with that. That's a reform statement.
I'm. It's a term that I've heard, and even though I no longer believe, one of the things that makes me scratch my head when I hear those things, I'm like, you only have a Bible because of this Catholic Church. Had it not been preserved through the Catholic Church, there'd be no King James version of it. And when I started, so the other thing that you mentioned was you did touch on the fear of hell, but that's not one of the, I mean, that is a motivator for you, but it's not your whole motivator.
It's not my main one by any stretch of the
Yeah,
imagination.
but it's love. The immediate thought that came to my head was, we have a God, especially in the Old Testament, but there you have glimpses of this warrior God in the New Testament. In the Old Testament, God is killing people left and right by droves, by thousands. If two dudes are fighting and the woman grabs the other guy's balls, you're supposed to kill her. God commands to have her killed. Then I told Billy Ray in Genesis 9:10, or I'm sorry, Genesis 38:9-10. You have God killing Onan for spilling his jizz on the floor, and instead of inside his sister-in-law. You have God killing a man for picking up sticks on the Sabbath. You have God killing people for the stupidest of reasons. And yet, in the next verse, God is compassionate and merciful. So you have these constant contradictions in the Bible over and over again. I have these conversations with Christians and they say, no, there's no contradictions in the Bible. Yes, there are. When Moses kills the Pharaoh that is beating up that Israelite, Moses kills him. And then later on, he's given a commandment, thou shalt not kill. Before the Israelites leave Egypt during the Exodus, God commands them to loot the Egyptians. And then later, the commandment is, thou shalt not steal. It's contradiction after contradiction. And it's these questions and contradictions that I'm like, this is clearly written by men. When you have Exodus chapter 21, the entire chapter is an instruction manual on slavery. And Christians and religious people will say, oh, well, that slavery was different from the American South. When in Exodus, it tells you if the slave master beats and kills his slave, he is to be punished. But if the slave survives for a day or 2 days after this horrendous beating, no punishment is needed. Is that how you treat a slave differently from the American South type of slavery? It's complete and utter nonsense. And God had all this time to make all these commandments and rules about this. You can't wear this garment on this. You can't do this on the Sabbath or I'll kill you. And all these stupid little rules, but not once is slavery condemned. As a matter of fact, in the first epistle of Peter, chapter 2:18, God tells slaves, be subservient to your masters, whether they're kind or harsh. And it's just in my head, as I've stepped out away from this, it makes zero sense to say that God is beautiful and merciful, and yet there's example after example of God killing people for the stupidest, ridiculous reasons. To me, when I hear Christians say that it's out of love, it's like a woman that has been abused and battered by her husband, and everyone's telling her, leave that fucking dirtbag. No, but he loves me. What? So this is what I hear when I hear these things of this compassion. And like I said, some of these stuff are making people's ears bleed. I understand that, and I don't mean it that way, but these are the questions that I have. These are the thoughts that come to my mind.
Go
Okay.
ahead, Brisson.
All right. I hear those questions a lot. It's kind of revolves around why God does certain things that he does within the Bible, or even within modern times. Or, you could even say, I guess a follow-up question usually to that is encompassing what they call the problem of evil, right? So, I do believe that there is a difference between killing and murder. Now, granted, you could argue, and a lot of atheists and agnostics do, that when God killed those people, he murdered them. Um, within the Bible, you could take Ananias and Sapphira, for example, in the New Testament. A lot of people will bring their example up, right, where they didn't, they lied and held back their property, not all of it, and their money to give to the church, right? And so God struck Ananias dead first, and Sapphira came in, lied again, and then she was struck dead. Happened in Acts. And there's arguments and discussions of whether Ananias and Sapphira were born again, and if they were in the grand scheme of things, you know, they went to heaven. It was an example to people who lie, lie to the church, and lie to God ultimately. And I think that's probably what it was. There's harsh examples set in scripture for that. But I don't think, them dying in of themselves because God created them, the act in of itself, I don't think it's evil. You can mention the guy that dropped the Ark of the Covenant. He died too, right? God killed him. Now again, God gave him a command not to do so. And as silly as people might think those commands are, there might be reasons out of themselves that aren't mentioned in scripture, or reason God has for that, you know, for that person to be punished right there in the moment, and the punishment is their life. And I'm not going to sit here and say and tell you, Wheezy, and your audience listening, that I have every answer for every question. I don't. If I said so, I would be lying to you. But logically, through scripture, it is taught that God takes every situation, and since he is holy, extracts the optimal good out of it. Which I believe, to be the case. I believe it to be true. As far as like the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, for example, a lot of people would say that God murdered those people, but how wicked Sodom and Gomorrah was, and the wickedness that could have begot if God allowed it to go further, how much anguish, because you're right. A lot of people say it's a contradiction that on one hand, God's long suffering, right? But at the same time, it also seems like in certain cases in the Bible, that he will, kill somebody very quickly. But like in the instance of Ananias and Sapphira, we really don't know much outside of what's written about their lives, the sins that they've committed. The same with the person who, dropped the Ark of the Covenant. The same with, someone, dropping the sticks. We don't know how much sin they've committed in their life. And to that point, maybe there's times where they should have died previously beforehand, and God stepped in and prevented that from happening and gave them more time to build a relationship with him. We don't know. Like, there's only back then, even now, I'm writing my finder's book, for example. I can make it 300 pages and it still probably wouldn't be enough, So back then, as far as, writing, again, like as John said, as in the Gospel of John, there could have been all the miracles of Jesus and all those teachings that he give. It could have been, there's no books in the world that can contain it. So if you're always looking for a reason not to believe, you'll find it. Now, you could argue just as much that if you're looking for a reason to believe, you'll find it as well. Okay. So that kind of makes us at an impasse there, and I think that's truly what faith is, right? The whole leap of faith aspect, right? Because they usually use the adage, faith is believing without seeing, right? Which there is some truth to that, and I'm not going to say that there aren't times where I'm reading scripture in the Bible and it can be quite difficult and I have to wrestle with it, and yeah, slavery is in the Bible. I'm not going to say that it's like America, like you'll have some Christians end up saying and stuff like that and everything. The only argument I can have to that is it was occurring around the entire world at the time. And at least the guidelines that were, set forth in the Bible for slavery were, now granted, the Israelites didn't really keep it because, again, as you know from scripture, the law was a schoolmaster, right? And the New Testament and the dwelling of the Holy Spirit is greater than that. But you even have, Paul arguing in his last letter for, I forgot the name of the slave, for him to be let free, right? So you're right. God could have abolished slavery. He could have, said not to keep slaves. But Israel necessarily wouldn't listen to him in the first place. If it was the only country, if Israel was the only nation to do so, would they have even followed it? They didn't even follow the laws that were given to him and the commands that were given. Like, how many times did Israel turn their back on God? So, do I think slavery myself is, in and of itself, is it moral? No. But I don't think that God in of himself endorsed it either. It's like, there's a good example of that. You might have to go. I'd have to think about it. But there's many examples in the Bible where God allows things to happen, but he doesn't outright endorse them. And there's a difference. Now, granted, you can argue from a free will standpoint, and again, you'll normally say, like, why does God permit evil? For example, God says marriage is between one man and one woman, right? That's pretty much set through scripture. But then God allows men like David to take multiple wives, right? So he permits it, but he doesn't endorse it. And the taking of multiple wives, in a lot of ways, that's the downfall with, the sin with Bathsheba, and the sin later with David's daughter. That destruction leads to the Davidic line, right, as far as their kingship. And then as Solomon takes it out to the great example where, I believe Solomon was saved. I believe in Ecclesiastes he repents from his previous sins. But him taking so many wives that it leads him to worship the wisest man outside of Jesus. It leads him to worship foreign gods. So so God allows this to happen, but he doesn't endorse it. So there you can make an argument there's a difference, but I know atheists and agnostics would make an argument that since he's allowing it to happen, he's permitting evil. Okay. And I understand that argument. I disagree with it, but I understand. Hopefully I'm making sense. I do think about these things often. It's not like I don't. Okay. I'm a highly logical person. All right. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I have an answer for every single thing that pops up, because then it becomes a game of whataboutism, But I do think about these things. I do contemplate these things. And I do it often. I check myself. And I think most born again Christians should do that. We're commanded to check ourselves if we're in the faith or not. We're commanded to check ourselves to test the scriptures, And some people would argue that for me, it's still cognitive dissonance. But I could turn that back around and shine the mirror and say, well, to other people, it is a form of cognitive dissonance too, to be fair. Does that make sense?
I'm trying to follow you, and I'm not trying to be a smartass. It's just some of the stuff. I don't know how it could be cognitive dissonance if I grew up believing these things, and it was until I took a step back out that I saw it different. When I used to think of atheists,
I'm not saying for you in general. I didn't say you. I'm saying other atheists and agnostics in general. There tends to be and I'm not saying you don't self-reflect, but there tends to be sometimes a lack of self-reflection. Now, you can argue the same thing for Christians too, and I would agree with that as well.
I agree, and I don't know. Sometimes I want to clarify, because sometimes people think people that are atheists or agnostics are all one monolith.
That's not
They
true.
think it's not true. They think that they all are woke, purple hair, vegans, and all this stuff. Yeah, there's a good chunk of them that I'm sure do that shit. I don't have any belief. I don't ascribe to any of that horse shit. So it's not, and I think it's an attempt by some, I'm not saying you, John, but by some religious folks to try to make atheists into a religious group of their own. But that is completely dishonest.
Which I think they are. I think it's a structure, but I think it's a structure full of different people. Not everybody's the same. And you can say the same with Christianity.
But all it means
structure.
is, so
it's a belief system. Atheism is a belief system, but with different beliefs in it. And you can say the argument same Christian.
It's a lack of belief. That's all it is. Atheism is a lack of belief. So one of the things that I always say, like I mentioned, I debated the NASA guy, and this is a wheezy quote, but NASA has made and I got it from Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan inspired this quote, but NASA has made the extraordinary claim that man landed on the moon. The evidence to back up this claim is flimsier than the lunar lander itself. And so when it comes to the onus, like who needs to back up their claims or whatever, it's religious people making the God claim. Whether you're a Hindu, if a Hindu person comes up to you and says Krishna is the great, bow down to Krishna, what would you do, John? You would probably dismiss them. Like, you wouldn't even give it a second thought. This dude's out of his mind. As someone without faith, that's how I view Christians as well. It's just it's the same thing. So it's not any different. And so,
but when I was a New Ager,
I'm not making the claim of God. It's religious people making the claim of God.
But as a New Ager, I would have believed, like, you gotta remember, I was raised in the faith, but I wasn't born again. And then I became a New Ager for many, many years, like completely subjective and accepting of all belief systems. Okay. And then I finally became a born again Christian. So I would have accepted the Hindu saying it to me, I would have believed universalism, that everybody eventually made to heaven, including atheists. I no longer believe that, so eventually, I believe that God is the objective truth of the universe, and not all, but most atheists, it's either most atheists and agnostics, and it's not always this way. And I'm not trying to make a broad characterization at a standpoint. I won't say most. I'll say some.
Speak your truth, man. You don't have to.
No,
hold
it's
back.
not my truth because this is a subjective statement I'm about to make. So I guess technically it is. Some atheists and agnostics, they have personal experiences in their life where they've either gone through suffering, or a religious institution, they've gone through suffering because of that. Or, usually that's, or the third option, is that they don't like God's rules and the structure involved, and they want to live out a sinful life. And that ends up, destroying faith in a lot of ways because of that. And it's not always the case. Some of it is, okay, let me ask you this. When did you start deconstructing your faith, and why? Like, when did it happen? Like, what started you on that road?
So I used to sing in the church. I recorded a couple CDs. The first time I came to Florida, I'm originally from the West Coast. I grew up in Utah for 20 years. So I know the Mormon faith real good, even though I was raised Catholic and grew up Catholic. I was raised around Mormons. And when I came to Florida for a concert, I was invited to come down to a radio station in Orlando. I fell in love with Florida, and that's why I came down here. But it was towards the tail end of my music church career that I started losing my faith. I had recorded a few CDs, and I felt like I was faking that I was feeling the presence of the Lord. I saw these people falling down in the spirit and praying in tongues. I'm like, I don't think these guys are. I think these people are faking this shit.
Well, to be honest with you, a lot of it's just autoglossia and emotionalism. I wouldn't consider it faking. I think they truly believe it.
Yeah. I get you, but to me, it wasn't I guess rather than faking it, it wasn't a real religious experience, and I was starting to feel like, man, this to me.
Have you ever had a real religious experience? And I'm not trying to mock you. I'm asking you.
I thought I did.
Because I thought I did when I was a child too, but I wasn't ever really truly born again. I could tell you that, so I thought I was.
I thought I did, bro. Like, I thought I knew God, and I was praying and
so was I,
living as much of a Christian life as I possibly could, like abstaining from sex, all that. Abstaining from jacking off because I thought I didn't want to burn in hell for jacking off. My views have greatly changed.
If you truly are born again and you sin, you have an advocate in Christ. But go ahead. There's a lot of common misconceptions about Christianity. And I'm not painting you as a brush, but in generalizing culture, there are.
But I agree with you. But the problem is there's so many. And that's going to get to my next point. I'm glad you reminded me, because I have a great point on this. Okay. Many sects of Christianity and flavors of it. So I started losing my faith. I started having questions, and then I just slowly stopped going to choir practice. And my mom was like, "You need to keep singing. Your songs touch people through the Holy Spirit. It's working through you. You need to keep jamming out." And I told my mom. And my mom passed away in January, and I miss her like fuck, man.
I'm sorry.
She was my queen, man. But
my condolences.
No, I appreciate it, man. It doesn't get easier. But she begged me that I should keep singing because it was doing good. The music was doing good. But I go, Mom, I'm not being honest with myself or with others because I'm starting to lose faith. I don't have any more faith. I don't know if God exists anymore. And the final nail in the coffin, this was years in the making. I was having questions back and forth. Does God exist? I don't know. Why does this happen? Why do kids in third world countries die of starvation if God is so omnipotent and great? Why? I had all these questions for years, brewing and years, and I was reading through the Bible, trying to get some answers, studying apologetics, trying to get some sensible answers. Nothing. And then the final straw for me, what helped me cross over into no faith. I call myself an agnostic because I leave room for the possibility of a higher power, but I don't think there is no higher power. So was when my brother's sister, my sister or my brother's wife, my sister-in-law, back in 2013, she got brain cancer. During her third pregnancy, she got assessed with brain cancer. And shortly after the birth, she died of brain cancer. And I was praying hardcore. And I went to visit her in California. While she was dying, I was like, God, I'm losing my faith. This is the time. I'll fucking turn everything around, and I'm sorry for ever questioning you. I need a miracle. I don't want my brother to go through his life without his wife or the kids growing out without knowing their mom. And what happened? Cancer swept, ate her up. She is no more. And the first few days, because this is what a lot of Christians will wonder, you're just mad at God. This is one of the most common, and I don't mean to demean anyone that may think this, but it's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. Because how can you be mad at something you don't believe in? It's absurd. People don't get mad at Santa Claus for not being real. But that, to me, the first few days, I was mad at God. I was cursing God's name. I was like, man, I can't believe this. And then it took about 4 days, maybe a week. And I said, you know what? This peace came over me. Why am I being mad at something that might not even be real? I'm letting this anger control my life. I need to control my own life. I need to take care of what's within my power and control, and not rely on these, what I would deem fairy tales, and dictate me on how to live my life and adjust. Because God is so omnipotent, so powerful. But when you need him most, innocent people, good people like my sister-in-law, they still die. And yet some of the most horrible monsters, pedophiles, can live up to hundreds of years old, or not hundreds, decades to over 100 years old. Jimmy Savile can terrorize the UK for all those decades. Nothing happened to him. That motherfucker lived a long, happy life. And so that's where my doubt started coming in. And I started really reading the Bible this time, really looking at it through a logical lens, if you will. And some of these things, a basic story like Noah's flood. When we're kids, we're given toys of Noah's Ark, and what a happy story, you know, like Noah put the two little animals going up to this big old boat, and it's a lovely child story. When you look at it as a grown-up with maturity and logical, the story is horrific. God genocided all those people and just saved Noah and his crew. And these genocides are just a continuous thing throughout the Bible. And I know I just went on a little rant, but I don't know if that answered your question, or maybe it brought up more questions. But that's when I started losing my faith, and that's the path that led me to where I am today.
It does.
I'm sorry, man. I just went on a tangent. My bad. I
No,
apologize.
I have no issue with that at all. My condolences first off. I myself I lost both my parents before the age of 18. I lost a son. I understand that aspect of losing loved ones. I get it. Um, I'm not gonna sit here and say I have every answer. I don't, and it'd be foolish for me to say that I do. But I do believe. Let me ask you this: what do you think should happen to the elite of the world? Do you think they should be genocided? That's an honest question. For the evil that they do you think they should be genocided?
I definitely think I'm not against the death penalty. Pedophiles, if you are a pedophile, and it's not just a he said she said moment. No, there's DNA evidence. The evidence is overwhelming that you're a pedophile. Out with you permanently. I'm not opposed to the death penalty at certain times, but I'll let you finish. I think I know where you're going, and I got the perfect answer for that because I've thought about this. It's not because I looked these things up. These are questions, again, John. When I've gone through the Bible, I've pondered them. I've looked for answers in apologetics. I'm like, I'm not cool with these answers, and so I've thought about my own answers to a lot of these things. So, yeah, as far as the elites, the scumbag elites, I don't think we need any elites ruling over us, and that includes celestial elites. I don't think we need any of those. That's my
Okay.
opinion.
Okay, so where do you think the problem of evil lies? Because you don't believe in God, so you can't logically espouse any evil to him because you don't believe him, right? So since you don't believe the Bible, you can't even make an argument that anything that happened in the Bible A happened, or B, that God is evil, correct? You can't make those arguments, right? From a
Oh, I
logical
can
standpoint.
because I can.
But you don't
I
but you
can.
don't believe in them though. You
No,
can't
I
from a
don't. I
logical
don't.
standpoint.
But I can show you. Are you familiar with Isaiah 45:7?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Isaiah 45:7 says, "This is God speaking." By the way, I form the light, and or let me share screen it so it's not just me reading
I
this.
form the light, I form the darkness.
I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. So it's not me saying it.
Now I do
Here we
believe that
have
I
God
will say,
saying
hold
that
on.
he
I do believe
does
the accurate
evil.
I do believe the accurate translation is not evil. I disagree with the King James version there. I believe it's calamity and disaster, which God does make calamity and disaster. I would agree with that. The evil standpoint, I actually disagree with the King James version on that. It's one of the few
Okay, what do
times
you
I
mean by
actually
the
do.
darkness then? Explain that.
Well, obviously he created both the light and the dark, right? I mean,
What does that
he created
mean?
the absence of light. It doesn't mean evil from an esoteric standpoint.
So just to interject just a little bit, and I'll fall right back. Can you hear me? Because I turned off my mic. And this is what I see as a problem overall, right? There's we're compensating for certain things, right? So when we try to find something, when we try to find a flaw in something, like slavery in the Bible, for instance, it was like, okay, well, maybe that's not the way he meant it. Maybe he meant it in a different way. Maybe he meant slavery. Well, he didn't condone it. It's absent from the Bible. Therefore, right? There's that train of logic, right? But the same logic isn't applied to when we disagree with something, right? We disagree with the King James Version, and Weezy's asking, why? What does that mean? But there's one set definition for that. There's not different scenarios that we can use to justify, right? There's not, well, that's not what he meant, or maybe he meant something else, right? There's that. Not to be totally biased here also. I think being an atheist is a religion. It's the belief in nothing. You're believing in something. It's nothing that you're believing in. Okay, there you go. I had to say that because otherwise I was going to explode. Now I'm going back.
All right. I mean, I if you give me a minute, I could look up Isaiah 45:7 and bring the actual Hebrew word and see what actual translation is the closest. Is it evil or is it disaster or calamity? The same thing that you would do through proper exegesis through the New Testament, right? From Greek to English, okay? And it's not always going to be a one-for-one thing. Again, I don't believe there's any perfect translation. I believe what was recorded down is perfect, and God has maintained a way through the Bible to preach his word and to preach his gospel, okay? But, I think the body of the message of there is kept intact. All right. But, but then again, you could, if you're a Calvinist, for example, you would say God's sovereign and he does ordain sin. Now, I don't believe that, but that would be, their answer to it directly of you bringing up that, specific scripture. If you give me a minute, I'll go to the Hebrew and see what
you're good, dude. Yeah, find it. I just wanted to add that right there, what you're saying, this is why there are literally tens of thousands of different sects of Christianity, because you could have a couple of denominations very similar in 95% of everything else they believe in, but there's a couple of key passages that they may translate and see very different. Therefore, you know what? We used to worship at the same warehouse. I'm going to start my own warehouse church, and here's a new denomination is formed. It's all these little tidbits. And you see this over and over again. Let me ask you this. The consensus with biblical scholars, you mentioned the New Testament, the Gospels, and I do agree with you that the earliest gospel was written around 40, 50 AD, with the oldest one around 100, 110 years AD. The consensus among biblical scholars is that, and this is a shocker to a lot of people that call themselves Christians, is that there was no Luke, Mark, John, the disciples that wrote these gospels. The consensus among biblical scholars is that each gospel had several authors. Are you of that belief, John, or do you believe that these were individual apostles that wrote each individual gospel?
I am not. And again, consistency from a debate standpoint, yes, there are scholars, that, and I'm not saying some, as in there are, modern scholars, more in number, that would state that, but then I would argue that would be appeal to authority. And that
there would be a what? I'm sorry?
The logical fallacy of appeal to authority. So,
Okay.
just because more people say something is true doesn't in of itself make it true, brother. All right.
But
And
wouldn't
so,
that apply to the whole story in the Gospels as well?
well,
Because
it
a lot of
depends.
people say that, well, these people wouldn't have died if they didn't believe it. No,
No, I think that
that applies the same.
I actually think the martyrdom, and I have to use the bathroom real quick. It'll take me 1 quick second. I think the
Yeah, go
martyrdom
ahead.
theory, I agree with that. I think that's one of the weakest evidential forms of that. Islam does it too. The Muslims do it as well. I think the martyr, that's why I don't use very often the martyrdom, I do believe it to be true, but I think it's one of the weaker forms of evidence. Okay. Which is why
Yeah.
I don't argue it. All right. Because they'll say, well, they wrote embarrassing accounts of themselves. Well, so did Muhammad, So there's a lot of Christian scholars that put more weight on that as an apologetic. I do not, personally. I think it's one of the weaker forms of evidence, to be honest.
Use the restroom, bro. We'll take a 30-second or a minute break. Hope you guys are enjoying that. I'm gonna play a little commercial while our guest comes back. What's up, y'all? Well, this is Wheezy. And if you enjoy this content and find it rather exquisite, please feel free to leave a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple iTunes. And if you would like to support the show with some merch and represent, visit the link below. Much love, y'all. All right. Mr. John will be back. Billy Ray is back. What's up, my man?
Chilling, what's going on?
Salud.
What's going on?
You can't hear me?
Yeah. I can hear you.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff that my man is saying, and God, there's so much. I try to keep notes to come back, but it's good. It's good to have these conversations. I enjoy it. Like, I don't want anyone to mistake me that I'm like ready to pounce. No, this I love this kind of talk. I don't know how you're feeling about it, Billy.
It's great. I'm having a good old time. I'm over here exploding, chomping at the bit. Like, say this. You know, to the point that I had to freaking interject for a second there. But it's fantastic. I'm loving it.
No, it's important to.
John is sounding way too rational and together right now. I need the wild man. Where is that guy?
Well, the wild man only comes out with you because we're best friends. So I could yell at you, but yelling at Wheezy, getting emotional.
You can yell at me.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's no reason for it.
Just kidding. It's a joke.
There's no reason
though. So. I wouldn't get offended by it. No, man.
There's no reason for me to.
There's not. John, I want to say this. I love having this conversation because I have these conversations with my dad. I had to stop. My dad was literally getting pissed off. And I'm like, this is going to destroy our relationship, Pops. Let's just not talk religion, man. I'll respect you and your beliefs, but you need to respect mine. And that's the hardest thing. Sometimes you have these conversations and they're tough. They're not for everyone. And I'm having this conversation with you. It's getting a little tough at times, but I feel that you understand, even though this is the first time we've ever met, that I don't mean any malice by it, man. I'm genuinely curious, man. And I would definitely down the road, would love to have you on back so we could talk about stuff that we do actually agree with, like on the Epstein stuff, all the great work you've done in that field. Also with the QAnon psyops. You've done a bunch of great work there, and so down the road I would love to have you back on and this time on more similar grounds. But
hey, I would love to duel it out again, though. I mean, speaking, discussing this stuff as well too. Like, I'm not going to shy away from it, and I'm not going to sit here to say I have every answer either. I don't, But again, that's what faith is, And again, I test myself regularly. Don't think that I don't. That's one thing that that me and Billy. Which I mean, Billy's probably messing around too. Is I run through all these scenarios. A lot of the scenarios you talked about, I run through my head, and I still think about them. I still contemplate them because it's my personality. That's who I am. Every statement someone says, I either say is this true or false, and put it in a basket. So I mean, I do that. And a lot of people will look at me and will go, I just believe this because out of fear or believe it because I'm told to or whatever. And to be honest, I believe it because I truly, honestly believe it's the truth. I wouldn't say otherwise if I didn't.
No, I feel you, man. I'm the same way. Like, if I really genuinely believe that I would be burning in hell for these sins that I'm saying with my mouth right now, that are probably burning some people's ears, I would not be saying it. I'll be like, oh man, but I don't believe it. I believe this is me saying it, and this trigger warning. I feel, and I'm gonna have the director and producer of the movie documentary on YouTube. Just search it. It's called Caesar's Messiah. He's coming on the show.
Joseph, I call him Joseph Attshill, by the way. Him, I'll get mad at, and him, I could pick him apart. But go ahead.
I thought he did. He's in the conspiracy. He questions 9/11, and when I saw his documentary, I was like, damn, finally someone that thinks along my lines. And
all right, let's talk about that right now, because I can pick apart a lot of what he puts forth as far as it being a Roman construct. Now, some people like Adam Green.
Let's break it down, because there's going to be people out there that don't know what we're talking about. What is, in your eyes, what is the premise of Caesar's Messiah by Joseph Atwill?
So the premise by him is the Roman elite, and I'm summarizing here quickly, putting together a plan to quell Jewish rebellions by falsifying a Jewish Messiah and point it to the Roman elite so that they could eventually pacify the masses and to gain control over them.
Yeah.
Is that a quick summary of his work, pretty much?
Yeah, it's called Caesar's Messiah, the Roman Conspiracy to Invent Jesus is the official name. And it sounds outlandish. And you're saying that you completely disagree with him.
Oh, 1000%. I mean, I've caught Atwill. I've caught Atwill as far as talking about the Nazis and the banning of Freemasonry. Him literally quoting Albert Pike's 3 World War letter to Manzini as being fact, when in fact it's conspiracy nonsense. I mean, there's enough data on the internet for anybody to look.
Do you believe Hitler killed himself in the bunker?
I mean, maybe he went to Argentina, possibly. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that question, maybe.
I don't think he killed himself in the bunker. I think he went to Argentina.
That's probably likely, based off of how much the Nazi regime is baked into South America. All right, but still, nonetheless, but I mean, as far as like catching him on something like that, when we know that it seems to be propagated by William Guy Carr and pawns in the game, the general theory that Albert Pike had predicted the 3 world wars, William Guy Carr was Navy intelligence officer, all these Navy intelligence officers always just propagating lies, right? Like Posobiec and Bannon, right? But that became a crux of conspiracy culture, that Albert Pike predicted the 3 world wars, right? When in reality, it's a modern forgery after World War II. As far as the propagation of how it is written, and there's tons of scholarly evidence I can post, to which I guess is appeal to authority, but you can read it for yourself. It's all plainly there. And there's an excellent blog that was written that shows and traces exactly who propagated it, where it came from its earliest origin. And Atwill still to this day bases it on fact. Now, granted, to give him a little bit of leeway here, majority of conspiracy culture does. I did for years. Okay. But it's like he makes that one of the crux of his arguments as far as Freemasonry in Germany is concerned and Hitler is concerned. And I'm like, okay, if you're going to use something as a crux of your argument, now you would argue with that with me arguing the Bible, and I understand that. I disagree though. But using that as a crux of your argument, you think maybe, you dite your I's and cross your T's on it. So it's the same thing when I discuss with Alex Sakaris, who Alex Sakaris is rabidly anti-Christian, to the point where he was saying that I was crazy out of my mind to Graham and Grammarica, and that I was pretty much falling into a cult, being a born-again believer. Okay, like that rabbit. All right, as him being a New Ager. We were fine, perfectly fine when I was a New Ager, perfectly fine getting along together. But the moment I became born again is the moment he just lost his mind. But the reason why I'm getting to this is he asked me the same thing, because he's a big propagator of Joseph Atwill and Caesar's Messiah too. And I said, okay, let's think about this for a moment. All right. The belief in Jesus in of itself didn't pacify the Jewish people. There were rebellions afterwards. Okay. More Gentiles actually, later, if you're looking at the numbers, converted to Christianity than Jews during the early, before 300 AD. Okay. And later, it would appear that Rome had to, through the formation of the Council of Nicaea and through Constantine to get control of Christianity, to regain control of their empire of a pacifist movement, they had to co-opt it. So why would they start something that would later almost lead to the downfall of themselves? Not that they couldn't, because that does happen from time to time with the elite, and I'm not saying it doesn't. But if you're following it, logically, and you may disagree with me on this, and it's something I've thought about for a long time, is it didn't pacify the Jews at all, and it ended up almost toppling their regime so much so they had to co-opt it.
I get what you're saying. I guess,
and very few Christians will ever make an argument like that. They won't. I don't know why. It's so simple to me in that regard.
I guess one of the issues that I go back and forth whether Jesus existed at all, period. Sometimes, all right, maybe for sake of arguments, he did exist. Maybe he didn't. But the fact of the matter is there's not very much evidence to support it. A lot of Christians will often cite Josephus as the Jewish historian. He talks about Jesus. He wasn't a contemporary of Jesus. He lived 70 years after the alleged resurrection.
Tacitus?
As far as a contemporary?
No, I'm talking about as far as non-Christian sources that Jesus exists historically.
The thing is, where's the contemporary ones? Which one's the most recent ones? Because all these guys were decades after the alleged resurrection. And to me, there's so many issues that I have with the Gospels. So whether you agree with Atwell's conclusion, I agree with a lot of it. It's curious to me how, let's take George Washington for example, a man that lived 200 years ago. We don't have much of his back and forths. I mean, we don't know really jack shit about his childhood. That whole chopping down the cherry tree, that's turned out to be a fabrication. We don't know much about him. And this guy, George Washington, was only a couple centuries ago. And then we go to the Gospels where we have word for word quotes that Christians often cite and take as literal gospel truth. And it's like, has it ever crossed your mind? So this was 2,000 years ago. And you think these scenes that we've been taught as kids growing up as Christians are exactly the way they happened and occurred and transpired? But stuff that happened only a handful of centuries ago, for which we don't have very much stuff to go on. I mean, that's the stuff that I wrap my own mind around. I'm like, how can I take this stuff at all seriously? You have these elaborate stories of Jesus doing all these miracles. That's the other thing, not just in the New Testament, in the Old Testament, God is performing all these miracles, parting seas and doing this and killing people personally. And then you fast forward, this was my thought process as a young kid growing up. I'm like, where is this God that is always, and I was a believer. It's not like I was saying this as a non-believer. As a young believer, I was like, how come the God of the Bible that was performing all these Christians, we can't see him anymore? Why is that? Like, it was a curious, as a young inquisitive child that I was, it was something that always bugged me. The other thing that always bugged me was my grandpa was a full-blooded Zacateca Indian. And I took pride in the indigenous heritage in my veins. And I would often ask my dad, I'm like, what about our indigenous side of the family that didn't know Jesus up until only a few centuries when the Spanish brought him over? What happened to them? They didn't have the opportunity to know Jesus in the Americas. What happened to them, Dad? I never got a satisfied answer.
Well, the Bible does put forth answers to that. They might not be satisfactory.
What happened to my indigenous ancestors?
Well,
that didn't know Jesus ever?
well, there are again, I mean, you would accept this as evidence, but there are missionaries that go out to far out places of the world and visit tribes that that already knew about Jesus. There's Muslims who have never heard of Jesus in Islamic countries, where the true Jesus of the
Muslims,
Bible.
they in Islam they teach Jesus was a messenger. They don't view him as a
Yeah, but
god.
they
They
don't
view
teach
him
him
as a
as
messenger.
God. He appears to them as God as such, not Isa of himself. He appears to them different than what they're completely taught. And the Jesus that appears to them says, "I'm the Son of God, Son of Man. I'm the Messiah." So they don't have any preconceived. They may know who Jesus is, but they have no preconceived notion of who he truly is. Okay, so they only have the Islamic scriptures based off of who he is. Okay, so it's actually heretical to believe that he is part of the Trinity, that he's the Son of God, right? To them, right? And that they ended up, have faith and become born again because of that. So you have instances where God knows supernaturally beforehand who is going to become born again, who earnestly seeks out the Lord, who earnestly wants to know Him, and He will make a provision to them, any way possible, obviously, for that person to be redeemed, those who are in the Lamb's book of life, you know. So that is an example. Another example is Paul talks about again that everyone, because we're made in God's image, we have a conscience. We all know God. And so if we're all held accountable. Now your argument is that the gospel was never preached to them. There is a Christian thought that when they, if Jesus and God didn't reveal themselves to them, like I mentioned, and there are stories of that happening. But let's say that, that's not the case. Um, you know, there were people that were worshiping, you know, God, or not, in the Old Testament, um, kind of like a way that, you know, they honor God to the best of their ability, but truly do not know Him. You had examples of Gentiles, Romans in the New Testament doing that as well before they became born again. So the question is do they, when they die, do they have a chance like the Old Testament did? Because before Jesus, when he died, you went to Abraham's bosom because Hades was partitioned, right? So, and no one's in hell right now, by the way. No one, not a single person's in hell. Okay. But if you die in a state of unbelief, you go to Hades, and then eventually you're resurrected, judged, and then cast into hell. It's a common misconception within Christianity as well, too. All right. So, do they get a chance to accept Jesus knowing him then or not? To tell you, I won't know till I get to heaven the true answer to that. Okay. But and there are more that I can't think of off the top of my head, things that could happen to someone who's never heard the gospel, or someone who's, never had a chance to accept or deny, you know, the gospel. And I think that God, you know, as a loving father, as a just judge, as a righteous king, there are examples made to people, ways made for people, um, for example, I mentally handicapped people. I think obviously they go to heaven. I think children go to heaven that die before the age of accountability. I believe that my son Abel's in heaven. So again, if God is just, and I believe that He is, and you and I would disagree on that, then I do think that, there would be made way to people who earnestly loved God, even though they completely didn't know Him, so that they could know God. And the same thing could be argued to the grace that was shown to me. God kept me alive through the breath in my lungs until I became born again, right? Like God knows who's going to choose Him. Okay. So that would be, my arguments to that. Um, and you would disagree with me, but that's scripturally how I see it. So
Yeah, it's fascinating because and I'm listening to you, and you're making quite a few claims, but a lot of it seems to be conjecture. A lot of it that can be interpreted differently depending from faith to faith to faith. And then it's just a big circular thing. And again, I don't have to recount where I would disagree with God, because as far as the morality aspect of it, I can sit here and just give you verse after verse after verse. Like, there's a scripture that is a shout out to you and me, John, where God sends a couple of bears to kill a couple of kids that were making fun of a bald man.
Hey, they were mocking the prophet of God, Elijah, and God's prophet shall be not mocked, brother. And besides, if they were before the age of accountability, they went to heaven. So, such a life, brother. Well, they would go to Abraham's bosom at the time, but you know what I mean. Like, okay, so let me ask you this real quick, just to that aspect. Okay, is there issue with morality when it comes to suffering?
Is there issue to morality when it comes
So
to
when someone has
give me an
cancer,
example.
someone has cancer, not, I guess I shouldn't have picked that one. Okay, because that's near to you. So we'll say my son. I'll pick that. Okay. So my son was born with an extremely rare medical condition. Okay, congenital with myopathy with excess muscle spindles. Didn't even have a fancy name, or the people that discovered didn't even have a name. Okay. And there was only 6 kids in the world with this condition at the time that he was born, known to medical literature. Okay. So he was born extremely physically handicapped, contractures. Most of the kids died from heart failure before the age of 1 or 2. Okay. And just like, and so my son had moments of suffering, but also had more moments of joy as well, too. The suffering that he had in of itself, okay, due to his condition, is that morally evil? Is suffering in of itself morally evil?
I think it's case by case. I mean, there's times.
But you understand where I'm going there with my logic, right?
Again, it's case by case, because sometimes, for example, when you want to lose weight, you got to run, you got to exercise your ass off. You're going to suffer. Is that bad? You see what I'm saying? So it's case by case thing. Now, if you're God and you're all powerful and you can cure the suffering, and you, instead of inventing cancer to begin with, instead of inventing evil to begin with, instead of inventing Satan to begin with, why create it? So one of the things that Christians and just religious people, there has to be a designer. There has to look at all these things. I'm like, who created the creator then? If everything has a creator, who created the creator? And it just drives me bananas, because it just seems like basic stuff. So
I would argue within time and space, there has to be a creator, but outside the constraints of time and space from a physical universe, there's not have to be.
But how do you verify any of this? What you just said?
It's faith.
It is faith. It is faith. And that's the problem that we have.
I do believe there is some science of it. I mean, I teach at my Christian school. I've taught earth science this whole quarter. That's what I do. So I do believe that, there's biblical evidence of creationism. I do believe there's biblical evidence of the flood.
You don't believe in evolution at all?
Oh, not in the slightest bit, no.
Wow. Okay.
I believe in, if we're using man's terms, I believe in microevolution, but I don't believe in macroevolution. I believe in adaptation. But no, I don't believe in evolution. No, especially the origins of evolution. Where does it start with? It doesn't start with Charles Darwin. It starts with his uncle, Erasmus Darwin. It starts with Erasmus Darwin, who was a Freemason, and the Visible College and the Royal Society of London. That's the basis of science. So we're supposed to be skeptical as conspiracy theorists, right?
We are. I don't
There's a
believe. I don't.
problem there.
I agree with a lot of science. Don't get me wrong. I do, but I don't trust the science. I
But the
think there's.
science, I mean, evolution is pushed by the science.
Yeah. I. How do you explain then if evolution? You don't believe in evolution. How a lion in Africa and a jaguar in the Amazon rainforest or in Mexico can successfully reproduce offspring if evolution isn't a thing? How do you explain that?
Well, I mean, it would be the same as a horse, a mule, and a donkey, right?
Not really, because those equestrians are all on the same continent. I'm giving you examples of two species on two different.
But at one time, I don't
continents.
believe. At one time, I don't believe that there were in different continents. I believe in Pangea existed before. the
Pangea,
flooding.
yeah, that's kind of where I'm getting at. And also, do I agree with all the tenets like the Big Bang Theory and shit like that? No, I don't ascribe.
I didn't
to
think you
everything.
did. Never a
Yeah.
straight answer, right? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, but I also don't believe this 7-day bullshit and God rested on this. It to me, both stories are fantastical and ridiculous.
do you believe in evolution?
I do, for the most part, yeah. Now, do I go along with the story that we were these little microscopic things, and then we turn into rats, then the rats turn into monkeys, then the monkeys turn into apes? The evolution from hominids, to me, makes more,
Where's
makes
the
sense.
missing
Although
link
there is
to
a lot
any
of missing
species?
parts to the fossil record.
Yeah, where's the missing link to any species? I mean, they
Yeah.
talk about whales used to walk, right? When the whale bone that they consider to be the only thing that they have from the 1950s, 1960s
Yeah.
is literally about this big. That can't support a
Yeah.
whale walking. I'm sorry, just can't.
No, I agree. I think there's a lot of holes in it, but I think the religious that God created man out of clay and then his woman from a rib.
I mean,
that's
wouldn't
a
it be?
bunch of horse
I mean,
shit.
wouldn't it be better to believe they were all made in God's image? If we're talking about from a strictly anti-racial, like an anti-racist standpoint, right? Because that's where evolution. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I'll be honest. I believe that Charles Darwin meant well, but when Sir Francis Galton took his Origin of Species and his beliefs of evolution and tacked eugenics onto it, then came the racist racial divide.
And I don't dispute that. The problem is that you can find a lot of these New World Order crap in the Abrahamic religions as well. I mean, all the constant genocides that God is doing, whether it's against the Amalekites, except for their young virgin little girls, spare them, but kill men, women, children, and their donkeys. Kill everything else except the little baby virgin girls. One is to assume the worst for those little girls if this event ever took place. But you see eugenics, you see the warrior god El Elyon, El Shaddai, which in my belief, if you go back to the origins of the Old Testament, it goes back to the Canaanite religion. Who is the chief god in the Canaanite religion? It was the god El. El was represented as a bull. When Moses comes down and breaks the tablets, what are they doing? They're having orgies and worshiping a golden bull, which it just makes it's clear as day that the Old Testament, especially in Exodus and Genesis, they're leaving an ancient memory of their Canaanite roots. And now this Judaism comes forth because there's lots of reference of polytheism throughout the Old Testament. And so I always like to go back to the origins. You're into the conspiracy realm when you follow the money. Where did all this begin? That's when you start to piece things together. And when you go to the origins of the Bible stories, and it's eerily similar to the Canaanite myths, when you look at Noah's flood, which is, for all intents and purposes, The Epic of Gilgamesh. It's just stories that have been recycled and that were long before the Old Testament ever came into existence. And so when you have these beliefs, as I did for the longest of times, you have this warped view of the world that it's a tiny little place where Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden. For whatever reason, God puts a damn tree where they could fall into. I mean, the whole story, it might make sense to you and to religious folks, these stories, but to me, as I step out, it makes zero sense. None of this logic adds up. It's all fairy tales.
But I mean, I would disagree that there is a lot of evidence throughout history. That's the contrary. I mean, we find, for example, if we're
What
talking
evidence?
well, I mean, for example, if we talk about the universal flood, explain to me why mollusks are found on the tops of mountains throughout the world.
I'm not disputing the universal flood. I just told you that the flood is a ripoff of the Epic of Gilgamesh, which
I would
was
say
written
it's the inverse.
thousands of years before the Old Testament.
See, I would also say I would disagree with that too. I would say that the worldwide flood narratives outside of the Bible were oral tells, directly from what originally happened, that was correctly later written down, by Moses. Now, I know that you would disagree with me on that, but I would say there's evidence to the contrary. It's like,
Do you believe the Exodus happened?
yes.
Interesting. There's no archaeological record in none of the Egyptian texts. To me, the Exodus, in it, you have to believe in it if you're, I suppose, if you're into the.
But then again, I would argue,
religions.
do you believe Pluto? I mean, Pluto. Sorry. You believe Aristotle existed? Do you believe that Plato existed? Do you like?
I think it's possible, but I don't think.
Because again, there's more evidence that Jesus existed than them. If you look at the records and you look at like how far apart like the earliest recordings,
But
of
they
their
also
works.
lived a lot earlier than this Jesus character. Do you think it's possible that, let's say Jesus did exist, that maybe he was an enlightened person ahead of his contemporary times? For sure. For sake of argument, let's assume that. And
that he's a world teacher.
some people got carried away with this stuff, and then they just embellished the crap out of the whole story.
My issue with that is that that's propagated by the world elite. Now, you would argue so is Christianity too through the Bible, though I would disagree with you. But the argument to that would be is people like Barbara Marx Hubbard would put forth that narrative that Jesus is just the world teacher. Alice Bailey, Blavatsky, for examples in modern time. And obviously they're marching us to the New World Order. So I would use that as a counter argument, saying, that I don't believe that to be true because of it. Because when I was a New Ager, I would just exclude certain things that they said. Right now,
What is New Age? Because you said that a few times, and like you mentioned about Gnosticism being a New Age thing, but Gnosticism, all it means
modern
is
Gnosticism in its presentation is New Age. Yes, I'm not talking about Gnosticism in
what is New Age though? Can you define that?
It's a subjective collection of various beliefs, picking and choosing from various religions within the modern age. So that would be my definition of it.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry. No,
I'm not talking about
that.
ancient Gnosticism. And you had Greek Gnosticism and Jewish Gnosticism before Christian Gnosticism.
I get the way that I'm using it is, so you have Gnostic theists, people that know God exists, no question. You have agnostic theists, people that aren't really sure if God exists, but they're more on the side that maybe there is a higher power. Then you have agnostic atheist, which I would say that's where I fall in. I hope I don't think there's any of these beings out there, but I'm open to the possibility maybe there's something that we don't understand. And then there's Gnostic atheists that say definitively there is no such things. So those are the four categories as I understand it. That's why I wanted to clarify the whole.
Well, it's the
New
religion of
Age thing.
Gnosticism that's ancient from, like if you look up a Gnostic, it wouldn't fall in the definition of knowing. It would fall into a person who believes they have secret or hidden knowledge.
I gotcha. Yeah, I mean this whole conversation is it depends heavily on faith, and you've mentioned it's like the New World Order, and that's where I think that's where our fundamental difference is. I believe when you have this belief in a higher power, whatever the Abrahamic religion of your choosing, whether it's a Christian Abrahamic tradition or a Judaic or Islamic.
I would put forth, I believe that there is the one true God, and you have to know Jesus or believe in Jesus. You would know that based off of previous understanding of Christianity. I don't believe I don't believe that the Jews and Muslims worship the same God as the God of the Bible.
That's interesting because the Old Testament is the Torah.
It is, they did then, but as Jesus said, "You of your father the devil," to those who did not believe that he was the Son, there's a path. There was a split. So most of the Jews that truly love the Lord, they became born again Christians. The rest that didn't, they believed that Jesus was the Messiah, they branched off into a different form of Judaism.
So where were these born again Christians when the Catholic Church, after a few centuries in Rome, pretty much had a monopoly on Christianity for well over a millennia? Many centuries. Where were all these born again Christians during this
What do you
time?
mean? When? What century? They've always existed
When
throughout. They've always existed. The Catholic Church put them to death once it consolidated power. I mean, it's any universal body of believer who believes that Jesus
so
Christ is the
there
Messiah.
were they were Catholic as well, right?
Some of them, yes, but not all of them. No.
Yeah, I'm not. See, this is what hung me up for the longest time was a lot of these things are that you're putting forth, and I don't mean it in a derogatory way. It's claim after claim after claim, like that this is what happened. You state it as it's a matter of fact. And I find it highly debatable. And like the Exodus, going back to the whole story of the Exodus, I mean, we're told that Moses wandered off in the desert for 40 years, and you're a smart guy. Do you know how long it would take to wander that patch of land for 40 years in real
I
time?
do realize that it's a small patch of land.
It's a tiny patch of land. Do you know how long it would take?
I mean, yes, I understand the distance of how long it would walk, but from Egypt to Israel, the promised land. However, biblically, I would state that, they walked around it. They wasn't necessary, and you would disagree with me on that, but they
But for
were
40 years, that like it's a small little area. You're not gonna wander around like. Are you? You're just going.
Hey, you can't if God's consistently turning you around and you're going. I'm just saying, like to me, I believe it to be possible. You would disagree with me, obviously, and say that it's not, but I don't think it's implausible. I just don't. Like, again, that's faith, where you would say that, there's no way, that's insane. And I would go, yeah, I mean, really, to be honest with you, there are a lot of people out there that are, I don't know, there's a lot of dumb people out there in a lot of ways. No, you would argue that I'm being stupid.
there's a lot
in
of
this.
people that what? I'm sorry.
There's a lot of dumb people out there that would get lost, is what I'm trying to say. But I believe it's supernaturally, like, something supernaturally happened, and you would say there's no proof of it. And I would argue, again, outside of the Bible, which I believe it to be the truth, again, you're not going to find instances of every thing that's happened. It's like there's a lot of things that are provable and can be proved in the Bible, I would argue, but not everything, can be proven exactly by man, which is where faith comes in. And you can say it's a weak cop-out answer, but everybody has a certain amount of faith, whether it's in themselves. I would say it's improperly placed faith. We all have things that we believe in, whether they're subjective, whether they're the objective truth of what really happened, or whether they're agreement reality. You would agree with that, right?
Well, there's some things in the world that are universal truths. Not some things. A handful of things probably in the world that are universal truths. One of them being mathematics. 2 + 2 is 4.
Billy uses this to me. Did he hear it from you? I wonder if he heard it from you.
Maybe he heard it from me, but
because Billy uses it to me all the time, and I would actually argue, one, mathematics is man-made, and two, there are plenty of times where through theoretical mathematics that 2 + 2 doesn't always equal 4.
Oh,
either.
I know. I've seen those arguments, but they're pretty,
I know you would disagree with that, but I'm just putting it forth there.
It's kind of the. It's like, well, technically speaking, I'm like, come on, man.
Hey,
we all know 2 + 2
technically
is
speaking,
equals 4.
I'm just saying,
Yeah. But you can't say the same with God, because God is regional. If you are in the West, more than likely you're gonna believe in
That's a
Yahweh
genetic
or
fallacy.
Jehovah.
Wheezy, that's a genetic fallacy. It doesn't make what the truth is. I'm sorry.
What do you mean a genetic?
It's a genetic logical fallacy in that you're saying the reason where someone is born is what they believe in, but the truth is the truth.
No, I'm generalizing. That's not always the case. There's Christians.
No, but I'm
in
saying
the
it's
Middle
not
East.
the case at all. It's a genetical fallacy. The truth is the truth. It doesn't matter where a person is born in.
I absolutely agree with you. So what is the truth?
I believe that God is the objective truth of the universe.
And how do you know you have the right Christian flavoring of belief? Because you have, we already talked over at the very beginning of the conversation that there are shit tons of different Christian sects.
But they're born again believers within those sects, though.
There's what?
There's born again believers within those sects, the unified body of Christ. I myself am. I give myself the label of like a free will independent Baptist, but I believe.
But what if that's not the right one? What if it's?
But the thing is that label doesn't matter. What matters is whether you're born again or not. There's born again.
But how do you know that? What if someone says
by what someone confesses out of their mouth, the fruits that they bear in their life? What they show that they truly believe, and what if
someone lived a horrible, horrible, horrible life?
Jeffrey Dahmer. I believe Jeffrey Dahmer's in heaven. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, and then in their last breath say, I, and they are sincere. If we could look through their soul magically, and they were sincere, really repenting as they took their last dying breaths, do they go to heaven or burn in hell?
I do believe they do, yes.
They go to heaven.
I do believe they do, yes. Repent means a change of heart, a change of attitude towards God. I do believe in that moment.
That's interesting. Yes. See, I strongly disagree with that, because have you ever seen the YouTube video? It's called "If I Were the Devil." It's
yes,
from the
one that was brought up on Joe Rogan's podcast. Yes, I do.
Yeah, but I heard this years ago, so it was funny when he brought it up recently. It's called "If I Were the Devil." It was written in the 1960s.
It was done by someone who was in Hollywood.
Let me pull it up. It's pretty quick. I could even play it if you'd like.
And I'm enjoying this, man. I really am.
And I am too. I don't want people. I don't want you, and I don't want people thinking that there's animosity at all here. No, this is awesome. Okay, here we go. Stream.
And no, I don't think that you haven't. I don't think that you haven't. Though we disagree vehemently, it's not that I think for any lack of knowledge or any lack of logic have you come to your conclusion. But I do believe that you're wrong, and you would say the same thing about me. So,
agree to disagree. All right, this is only 3 minutes, y'all. watch this, and I have some questions, and I'm glad you're here because I've been wanting to ask these questions regarding this video because I seen it years ago, and I was like, I've got my own version of this, and it's the opposite of this video. All right, 1 second. Here we go.
If I were the devil, if I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree, thee. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions, just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing. Paul Harvey. Good day.
All right. So that was Paul Harvey's If I Were the Devil. And I can get down with a lot of what he wrote there. My rebuttal to that, as I saw this years ago, and I was like, well, let's try that, but this time, if I were God. If I were God, I would not create the devil to begin with. I would not create suffering. For example, in the natural world, watch a hyena rip apart an impala and eat it alive as the poor antelope is screaming in pain and horrible. That's nature. But if I were God, I would never create such a thing. Why do we need to require killing and violence for any of this? I would not create it if I were God and omnipotent. So a lot of the stuff he says, I can do the same. And I would say, if I were God. And then, since he's talking about the devil, let's talk about the kill count. Let's look at God's kill count in the Bible. And let's look at Satan's kill count in the Bible. most people, most Christians would be surprised at the vast disparity between the two.
That's low tier atheist argument right there.
Do you not agree? How many?
No, I
many
don't.
people-
No, I don't. I mean, well, we can
You
discuss.
don't think God killed anyone in the Bible?
No. There were people that God killed. Yes, I
Who
never.
killed them though?
I just said God did. I didn't say
Yeah.
he didn't. But Satan has killed no one. Really?
He's killed 10 people, Satan, and God has killed well over 10 million in the Bible
No.
alone.
What about the people that? Again, I would say there's more people in the Bible. I would say that there's more people in the Bible that died, whether by God or by Satan, that have been attributed to them as such within the Bible. Okay. But that being said, though, however, you don't think that, okay, so a couple of things, I guess, where to start with all this.
No, I didn't mean, you said it was low tier stuff. I want to hear you break
Well,
that
that's
down.
low tier,
It's a
yes.
legitimate.
It's one of the only low tier things you've actually said, which surprises me.
No, but what's low tier about it?
I'll discuss it. Hold on. I believe Paul Harvey's mistaken in his basic premise. Okay, Wheezy? I believe that he's casting too much onto Satan. Okay. Instead of taking the wicked heart of man, all of it of itself. You'll see that a lot in Pentecostalism, where the devil gave me a flat tire. All right. Where the flat tire could have been many different reasons, right? You ran over a nail yourself. Maybe Satan, maybe one of his demons did put a flat tire in front of you. Okay. Maybe God did it because if you didn't get a flat tire, you would have hit a car head on in the next two lights. Okay. But, it's not everything is Satan. Okay. So you have the wicked heart of man, which man has done evil on their own. And you and I disagree on that fully. Because I would assume, okay, let me ask you this. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you believe that mankind overall, do you believe that they're inclined to hedonism or more inclined to doing what is right and self-sacrificing?
Define hedonism. Is that like no holds barred, do what you will, or is that what you're talking about?
Pretty much do what thou wilt, yes.
And what was the second part?
Self-sacrificing. So do you believe that humans are more inclined to satisfying their own desires or putting their self, second and satisfying those desires of those who are around, self-sacrificing of those who are around them? Do you believe they're more inclined to hedonism or more inclined to self-sacrifice?
I believe in a mixture. I think I think that's no different than
But overall,
choose the left or choose the right.
But overall, do you think people are more inclined to be selfish or more inclined to be selfless?
I think overall, I don't know. I fall in the middle of those two because sometimes if I help someone in need, it's kind of selfish. Let me explain. If I help someone in need because I feel good, I get gratitude.
So alleviating suffering is selfish.
No,
it's a very Buddhist-like principle.
No. What I'm saying is, it makes me feel particularly good about doing good unto others. It's not because I'm in a reward system into a celestial kingdom that I'm doing these things.
That's not what
it makes me feel good.
Okay, go on.
I don't know if that makes sense, man. That's just the way that
because I would argue the grand totality of everyone's life, the reason why the Bible says, no one has done good, not one, is because if you take the great, even people who think that they're good people, okay, people that try to do I would say even majority, all Christians except for Jesus was sinless, but the sins in the selfishness that men and women have done collectively over their lives, I would be more inclined to believe, and you would disagree with me on this, that it is likely that they are more selfish than selfless. And even by your definition right in themselves, when they do a selfish act, they're still being selfish. They're still committing sin. That's probably accurate even based off your worldview, just based off of that statement alone. Correct?
But what is sin and who defines sin? That's what gets me, man. I'm like, who makes you the arbiter of this? Well, it's in the Bible. Well, the Bible also says that if your daughter has premarital sex, you're supposed to take her to the town square and stone her ass to death. And
we no longer
you want me
practice
to get-
Levitical law.
And I'm only saying this, maybe you consider it low tier atheism, but it pisses me off when people say, we're the party of values. We have these strong moral values. And I'm like, man, I could point out a lot of the stuff in the book that you proclaim is truth, as gospel, as the word of God. I can point out tons and tons of scripture that are completely immoral. And
But
you would agree with
but,
me.
But you're okay with stoning pedophiles, right?
With what?
You're okay with stoning pedophiles, right?
Hell yeah. If there's verifiable evidence without any shadow.
So you without
reasonable
sin
doubt.
pick up and cast the first stone, go and sin no more to the woman? That doesn't matter? Because we're talking about
Wait.
casting stones here.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so perspective, I guess you would argue, matters, right? A sin isn't a sin. They're not equal, right? You would make that argument, right? Is there okay, let me ask you this. Is there redemption for a pedophile?
If there's some people, and this is a sticky one for me, and I don't mean it in a nasty way. It's just, do you remember the series To Catch a Predator?
Of course, yes, with Chris Hansen. Yeah,
with Chris Hansen, and most of them motherfuckers deserved it, every bit of it, 100%. There was one guy that got busted twice. I don't know if you remember him. He was sitting butt-ass naked waiting for this girl to appear. The dude seemed like he had mental problems, man. That son of a bitch, maybe I'm in the minority thinking this, but I do feel bad for people like that. He did seem like he had legitimate mental health issues. He did not seem coherent like the other, like 98% of the people that was on that show. You know what I'm saying? So under certain circumstances, yeah, I will have compassion for some of these sick fucks because they're not all there, man. Now, do I believe they should be out there in the public? No.
I don't believe they should be either. No, just.
But
you know,
do you see what I'm getting with that?
All right,
I
let me
think
ask you this. Let me ask you this:
yeah.
if one of your family members were murdered, could you forgive?
If one of my family members was what?
Were murdered, could you forgive the murder?
I don't know, man. I had my best friend get murdered.
I'm sorry.
I grew up, he was like my brother. He was shot in the back in cold blood. And I haven't forgiven them motherfuckers. They served 10 fucking years for taking a life. And if I had my way with no repercussions, a life for a life. You know what I'm saying? So I haven't forgiven those motherfuckers. And he was in my blood, but he was my best friend. I can imagine that no. The answer to that is no.
See, I used to have that belief too. But through being born again, through the Holy Spirit, and through my belief in Jesus Christ, I mean, my son, for all intents and purpose, was murdered through medical neglect. But they by medical error, and I forgave them. I mean, it's tough, man. And I'm not going to say that it's an easy thing to do, but that doesn't excuse, like, again, just because you forgive somebody, like some people say it's weak if you forgive someone who's murdered a family member, but they still
I don't think so.
They still
I think
face
we're all
justice.
different,
And I'm
bro.
not saying you are. I'm saying they still face justice though through the criminal courts, and though they should. I don't think that's the thing is I don't think pedophiles should be executed. But that doesn't mean they should be out in the streets either.
I think if you know what you did, like I gave you that one example of that one dude that clearly had mental issues going on. Clearly, you could see it in his eyes that he was not there. This dude had mental issues. I've worked with handicapped folks. You know what I'm saying? But if you're a regular, for all intents and purposes, Joe, and you know what you're doing is wrong, and you're out there hurting innocent kids, F you, off with your head. I don't give a shit. I maybe that's where we disagree, but
there is a biblical argument that by doing so,
I don't have any redemption for anyone that harms kids, man, because now you didn't just harm this kid, you harm them for the rest of their life, and they've got to deal with these things that you've caused them. You've caused them irreparable damage, and so I'm not cool with that shit. So maybe that's where we.
Oh no, there's a biblical argument to be made that it keeps him from harming somebody else, right?
Hell yeah, damn straight.
So there is a biblical argument for that, And
I used to be the opposite. I used to believe, I'm like, no, don't kill anyone. Now I'm like, no.
So when God, destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, right, and the children, that were there, they immediately went to heaven. Well, they went to Abraham's bosom at that time. But the wickedness in Sodom and Gomorrah, the raping that was going on, and the molestation that was going on, the pedophilia was going on, was that God doling justice or not? Again, it's a discussion of.
It's a blanket. You're saying everyone.
Not all of them.
There had to be some people in Sodom and Gomorrah. They're like, no, fuck this. I don't want none of this.
According to the Bible, not one. And even Lot wasn't the best out of the group either.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's that passage in Book of Numbers.
Because Lot tried to give his daughters, right? And then later, his daughters, because of that own perpetuated sin of Lot, okay? Again, the evil, wicked heart of man, which is the answer to evil and the answer to the fall, okay? Which will lead us back to, again, is it all Satan or is it man? Okay. And Satan's the tempter. Okay. Again, later, they raped and became pregnated by Lot, right? So that one sin that Lot did, because sin, like Lot, though he believed in God, and he was the best example out of all of Sodom and Gomorrah. And yeah, they were that wicked. I'm pretty sure all of them were. If Lot was the best they got, and as he's not by any stretch, his sin directly had consequences, So what can I say to that? Again, it goes back to, yes, God did kill people. Okay. But as the just judge and the righteous king,
This is
I know you disagree with that
wholly, because and excuse the pun, it's just, I told Billy this a couple of weeks ago when we first did our podcast, and it's been awesome having this conversation with you, John, because we're able to talk about these tough conversations. When I have these conversations with my dad, like 10 minutes in, he's pissed off and angry. And so we've been able to go at length with some of these subjects. But it just, it troubles me how a lot of these things that go on in the Bible, the killing, the illogical laws, like in Exodus, you have to have a certain color of dyes and linens, and I mean, even the Passover, you have to put lamb's blood on your door. I mean, you said earlier that God knows what's in us and what's in our heart, but yet these people had to put lamb's blood to not get singled out and get wiped out.
He commanded them to do so. I mean, again, it's more for them.
Stop for a second. The commandment to even do that to begin with, like, this is what hangs me up. Like, you're just talking about it with a straight face and not like, let's use some reason for a second.
Well, I mean, it was to show to the Egyptian people the power of God, and to the Israelites in themselves who.
But he hardened the Pharaoh's heart. So
But,
I mean,
but hold on, Pharaoh hardened his heart first, and how many times did he harden his heart?
several times.
And how it was the equal amount. God hardened it only afterwards.
But why? See, this is where it's like, this is why I don't believe right here. This is the meat and potatoes of why I don't believe. It's simple stuff, and yet it's just getting glossed over. It's like,
I'm not glossing
wait,
over. I'm addressing it. You
but
said,
wait a minute. So God has all this power to open seas, to prevent this and that, to harden the Pharaoh's heart. I mean, for all we know, Pharaoh could have been
hardened
a
his heart
kick-ass
first.
dude, but God
Again,
hardened his heart.
Yes, but if he would have never done it, God would have never done it to him. You know, he had done it to himself, I think 4 times or 3 times. And then God only matched it what he did. He did it, the wicked heart of man. Who can know it? He did it first. Again, you would say that consequences have, or actions have consequences, right? You'd believe that, right?
Hell yeah.
Okay, so if Pharaoh did it and God just followed through because that was what was in Pharaoh's heart. He gave Pharaoh a chance to repent. Pharaoh didn't. Do you want God? Okay, are the Calvinists right? I mean, maybe they are. Double predestinationism, that's like the sin, and God literally makes you do everything that you do, whether you sin or not. And, he made those to accept him in his glory and those to reject him in his wrath. Vessels of wrath, vessels of mercy, right? From Calvinist standpoint. To me, that's a very cold God, and I don't see that from scripture. Now, you would say God is cold anyway. I disagree with you on that. But, again, the Calvinists would say that that God is completely sovereign to the point where every single thing that you do, whether a sin or not, God has ordained it.
And they are entitled to that thought. And you may not agree with it. I may not agree with it. But it kind of goes back to what I asked you, like, how do you know for sure that this, I mean, you mentioned born again Christian belief system, I suppose. You have your brand and flavor, but what if it's Mormonism that is correct? And everyone mocks the Mormons for their outlandish beliefs. One thing I tell my dad cracks jokes about the Mormons, like, it's so stupid that they believe Jesus came to the Americas and blah blah blah. Like, Dad, it's kind of ironic that you find their myths and stories ridiculous, but in that same fashion is what I view your beliefs, your Roman Catholic Christian doctrine beliefs. It's the same thing for me. And where was I going with this? I don't know. It's when I look back at these scriptures again, I do feel like it's a new world order. I mean, what happened as a result when the Roman Catholic Church got huge? It eventually conquered the whole world. There's people that say Rome never fell, or it just turned into the Catholic Church, and its churches throughout the world are its embassies.
Well, I would agree with that somewhat. Yes.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that as well. And so,
all right. So let me ask you
had
this.
a point
On that
Yeah,
train of
go
thought.
ahead, man.
Let me ask you this. I'm lost. I had something.
I have a bunch of crap in my mind. And I'm just trying to.
So do I.
But you know what? Let's get back to the. You said I had a low tier argument, but you never told me exactly why that was.
Well, the answer to the problem of evil, right? So it's like, again, you keep saying, God did this and God did that, and it's like God created Lucifer, Satan. But again, biblically, where is the blame put for the fallen state of the world that we live in today?
Repeat that. Here, look at the screen right now. This is both of our brains right now.
Yeah, pretty much.
We both had brain farts.
Um,
Shout out to Missy.
We
We both were like,
we're
Yeah,
getting
the
so we're getting so
we had brain
metaphysical to the
farts.
point where we're getting lost. Like, most people are not going to be able to follow the conversation between two of us because we're so in the weeds. They're going to be like, "Where are they?"
Yeah,
You know,
we're
it's-
pretty deep. We probably lost a lot of people right now, but I
It
mean,
has been enjoyable though. It's
Hell
it's
yeah, man.
intellectual
I-
sparring. It's great. So
it's been awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, we could probably get close to wrapping it down. I've done marathon podcasts, bro. So I mean,
I guess the train of thought of where I'm getting to, okay,
yeah,
is, again, where does the Bible scripturally, where does it place the blame on, the fall of man? Where's the blame?
the blame goes back to Catholics would call it. I don't know what you believe in as a Baptist precisely, but Catholics would say original sin.
I don't
Back
believe in
to-
original sin, but you can't be held accountable for someone else's sin. Their actions, yes. So the actions of Adam and Eve and the consequences of those actions, we're all living in it. Okay, it's in my opinion, and I believe it scripturally. I mean, I believe it's such objective truth. I believe it's what it
But you
is.
see, that's where I have a problem when I hear people like being against reparations. Why do I have to be accountable? I'm not owning slaves. Why do I have to pay reparations? I agree with that. But then they'll go along with, well, because of the actions of Adam and Eve, we deserve to be punished. Wait a minute. Do you see where there's a problem with that line of thinking?
But there's a consequence. Like, it's a consequence of action. Like, if I go and punch you in the face, then there's going to be consequences for those actions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, but
And then my family's gonna have to
my
feel those
great grandpa punched your great grandpa
But
in the
hey, there's a
face,
possibility there is consequences of that actions too, right? Maybe you broke his jaw. Maybe your great grandfather broke. Let's go far back as we can.
yeah,
If we're using the the argument of the butterfly effect, right? So, like, again, like, I guess, should Adam and Eve pay reparations to humanity for
Hell
their
yeah.
foolishness?
I still want to roll around with the root hanging out, you know what I'm saying? But because of them, we can't anymore. We got to put a little shrub on our genitalia.
But I'm just saying. Like,
Just kidding.
yeah, you got me there. The Bible rests on, I believe, on man. And there's a lot of Christians that put blame again on Satan. And Satan just is the tempter. And God does provide a way out of the temptation. There's no temptation, grace, that you would face that you don't have an ability to self-sacrifice and to turn away from. So, again, God created the world. Satan rebelled. Now, when he created everything, you'll hear the argument, well, why didn't he just create it perfect? And again, my argument to that is, and you would disagree with it, is if he created it perfect, would we exist, for one, me and you? And two, would we be talking to each other? Like, if it was perfect, would we ever exist? You could make the counter argument to that is we would, but we just don't know. Like, for example, if God, people ask, why doesn't God just throw Satan into hell and be done with it? But if that's the case, you and I wouldn't. If he would have done it 50 years ago, we wouldn't exist. Right?
See, yeah, I don't ascribe to that. It's kind of like that Paul Harvey video that we just watched. Like, if I was God, I wouldn't allow for any of this violence and ill will towards each other. Because with your argument, I mean, look at heaven. In heaven, it's basically like a celestial, and I took this from Christopher Hitchens, which in his debates, I think he destroys every Christian out there in his
I
debates.
disagree with you on
But
that.
when he viewed on his views on the Iraq War, completely dead wrong. And that's one of the fascinating things that I see with people. And I'm sure I have many holes in my worldview, 100%. But that's the thing. It just goes to show that even super smart, intelligent people can be super right on some things and be dead effing wrong on others.
I agree.
That's just.
I just believe
What's that?
Christopher Hitchens is wrong against Christianity and wrong against the Iraq War. I think he's wrong against two things.
Okay, and show me a debate where he gets.
That's one
manhandled
more.
by a
That's one
Christian.
more thing I believe. But again, there's the evidence in a debate. You wouldn't take it to be fact, right?
But he I don't know. Maybe it's the way people see it. But he was a brilliant mind. But one of the things he said that, so I guess we can agree to disagree on that subject. But one of the things that I agree with him on is this whole view of heaven. It's essentially a celestial totalitarianism paradise where you've got to be this, you got to be that, you got to have all these rules. It makes hell seem like a cool place where there's strippers and blow, and you're just hanging out.
Hell is eternal torment and separation from God in the outer darkness. It is not that. I'm going to put that forth, but go ahead.
You can, but it's like, I don't ascribe to any of that. I don't believe in this Satan guy. I don't believe in this devil guy.
So let me ask
what
you
I believe
this.
in is us. We have each other. And Jesus in the New Testament says that I came to divide even family members.
Mm-hmm. I don't believe that's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Jesus said this.
It still doesn't mean you don't love them. But if someone commands me to deny Jesus, no matter who they are, I'm not going to do it. It still doesn't mean I don't love the person. I'm just not going to do specifically what they say me to do. And hate in that instance, when he says you hate your father, that just means love less in that Greek context, So I love everyone, including myself, less than I love God. Now you would say that's a form of Stockholm syndrome, probably, but I disagree with you on that.
I like how you add that caveat. I love it. Like, you may disagree with me, damn straight, but no, I mean, it's been awesome, John. I really loved it. Like, initially when I didn't know much about your work and we were throwing this around, I didn't know how this would have gone down. Maybe a little bit heated. I didn't know, but I had told myself it doesn't matter how heated it gets. Just let's cool, man. Let's have this rational conversation. And I want to thank you, man, because it's hard. I've wanted to have this conversation, but I told you before, I had this conversation with my dad, and 5 minutes later, it's getting pretty bad.
And I'll say this: it's the same reason why I get upset at Billy. I think it's because, again, the love between you and your father is greater than me. The love between me and Billy, I love him like a brother, but it's still different. Okay, but it's because your father, again, like it's when you're arguing that to another person, it's. I would assume your father loves you. I'd assume you had a good relationship with him.
I still do.
So
and
that's where
he's
it's
trying
emotional.
to save my soul.
It's emotional. It's emotional.
But the problem that I have with it is, and I've told this to my dad, I go, look, Dad, I grew up in this shit. I've read this stuff. It's not like I don't know. I know fully well. I know that I'm destined to an eternity of burning crispy hell if I don't change my views. I know that. I realize it. I just don't believe it. If I did, I would not be saying the things I said tonight. I would not be doing any, holding any of the beliefs that I have, but I don't. And I tell my dad, look, Dad, I know you mean the best for me. I know in your mind, you're saving my soul, but it is super annoying because imagine, Pops, if I start sending you satanic pamphlets constantly, you would get pissed. You would get mad. And you would feel like I'm disrespecting you. So why don't you respect my feelings that I don't care about any
Well,
of this?
biblically, your father, though, as much as he loves you, you shouldn't cast your pearls before swine. If you constantly
what?
refuse him, biblically, you shouldn't cast your pearls before swine. So if if you're constantly refusing him, he's supposed to just lay off.
My dad.
That does show how much he loves you, though.
I know. No question. No question. I posed a question to him a short time ago, a couple of years ago. I knew his answer, but I was shocked. I was kind of messing with him. And I go, Dad, let's say you're in a life, I'm in a life or death situation, and you had to choose between choosing Jesus or saving me from dying. Who would you choose? And without flinching, no emotion, Jesus is my king. I'm like, God damn. And to me, that was like, this is what faith, this is the fanaticism that faith does. That's how I view it. You may view it differently. But to me, that was like that. That's if my dad looks like an Arab to begin with. But if my dad was a Muslim, he'd be a fucking jihad, 100%.
But for a thought experiment, though, what if Christianity is correct? Because I would argue, compared to all the other religions, they're either works based or knowledge or gnosis based, right? Where Christianity is the only one where you put faith in Jesus Christ as a Messiah. It's a faith based religion, which is the only one to my knowledge. I haven't found one that's like that. Islam is works based, Judaism is works based in the current form. Buddhism is works based. Gnosticism is enlightenment based. I haven't found one.
The thing with faith based, though, I mean, you could sit at home and have faith that you're gonna be 6'10", muscular, and be a trillionaire in 10 months doing YouTube shorts. You could have faith and just sit there and eat pork rinds and Code Red Mountain Dew and play COD all day. You can have faith. But if you don't get your ass up and do anything about it, where is that faith going to take you?
No, faith without works is dead. I mean, James said it himself.
That's what the Catholic Church teaches. But still, I mean.
Yeah, but I would assume they teach it differently, but that's a whole nother discussion. But I would say that, okay, one final question.
Yeah.
I'm
loving this, John. And I definitely want to do another show where we definitely go into the weeds on shit that we actually do see eye to eye. I mean that. We'll get after the show and try to schedule a date, because as far as we're having this conversation, I don't want people to mistake it that, yeah, there's been times where it's got a little heated, but it's all in fun. And there's no ill will, at least for my part. I'm assuming John has none either. I'm enjoying this, and I feel he's enjoying it as well. So I definitely would love to do another show, maybe like an Epstein infested saga, deep dive in there at some point. But I just want to throw it out there before we close out, man. But I truly enjoyed my time, man.
I would say it was intellectually heated, but not emotionally heated. I'm not angry in the slightest bit.
I yell, so in case you've never heard me.
It's just passion.
It's just passion, man. This guy named Uncle Bobby, my UK followers will know. Bobby, he's from the Greek word of. Never mind. But anyways, he would always often say that Weezy's just full of passion. He's full of passion. Like, this is me. This is me. Talk to Billy Ray. Billy Ray, we just barely met each other, but on the phone, he can attest that this is me on or off the phone, or my.
And Billy can say the same thing about me too. Which, by the way, you ever take a Myers-Briggs personality test? I'm just curious offhand of what you scored.
Take a what?
Myers-Briggs personality test, INTP, ENTP, ENFJ.
I think I did, but many years ago.
You take it again. I'm just curious. Okay.
All right, I'll do it.
Um,
Send if you can message me the
okay. I
the
will.
name of that quiz. That way I'll remember.
Because you're
But
definitely
I'll
very
take it.
anti-authoritarian, and I am myself too, which is funny because INTPs tend to be atheists. But again, there are Christian INTPs. They just tend
There's
to be the
flavors
rarest
in
kind.
all the spectrums, man. All the beliefs, all the ideologies. The way my worldview, real quick, before I know you had to ask me a question, but just my ideologies. I try to look at things in a centrist point of view, man. Because if you take it, no matter what it is, you take it to the extremes. Um, a lot of times, I mean, it's a 50-50 chance you could be dead wrong. So I try to see things. I used to be very, very lefty, very, very blue, no matter who type of shit. Nowadays, and I used to reject all things Republican, all things conservative. Now that especially moving out here to Florida in the South, um, I've opened up my views. I'm not a Republican, I'm not conservative, but I'm also not hardcore left or any of that shit. Or not only do I lean atheist, I'm apolitical. I don't care for the Democrats nor the
Well, neither do
Republicans.
I. I consider my beliefs
Yeah.
to be conservative or aligned with them. More fiscally liberal, probably morally conservative. I'm anti-war, which used to be a liberal platform, but now they
Yeah.
got it a conservative platform.
That's
Yeah.
why I'm apolitical. That's why I was a Democrat for a long time, because it was anti-war. It was for freedom of speech, and now
I'm for freedom of speech too,
they
within
flip
reasons. And
sides, man.
but there's always been caveats of freedom of speech, though. Let's be real here. There's not totality of freedom of speech, for example. There's
And I
always
mean, by what I mean by freedom of speech is by the legal definitions of it,
Yeah.
where you freedom of speech includes the ability to criticize.
Oh yeah.
That's part of freedom of speech, and both parties cower to that. Republicans did a lot of that in the 90s and even in the Bush era, and then now you fast forward to 2024, and it's bananas to me to see that it's mostly Republicans for freedom of speech. Although whenever a satanic temple or a Baphomet statue gets erected in the South, a lot of these people that say they're for freedom of speech begin to lose their shit. So
I
you
mean, I
in
am
freedom of
definitely
speech?
against it. I think it's blasphemy, but legally they have the ability to do so.
Yeah. This is what made America what it was that ability to practice and believe what you will. And people forget about all these things, man. And I would love to have you on again, because I've been doing a lot of the Abraham Lincoln assassination. A lot of people always talk about Kennedy being the first deep state hit.
Kennedy
I've been
wasn't our
taking.
guy, in my opinion.
What's that?
All presidents were the elite, including Kennedy, in my opinion.
Yeah. No question. No question. But I mean, even when you go to the Abraham Lincoln, a lot of people think that our Constitution has been subverted lately and recently.
It was
No, it's
messed up
always
since
been.
the very beginning. It's always been.
It's always been. You look at the Abraham Lincoln assassination and how the co-conspirators were rounded up. They were given military tribunals. The Constitution didn't mean shit in the 1860s. Don't be complaining that today in the 2020s it's any different. It's always been.
Well, only a few of the
perverted.
founding fathers I consider to be Christian. Most of them were deists or Satanists, or I mean, look at Benjamin Franklin and Hellfire Club. I mean, the myth of Americana is disgusting to me. It is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I am an American. My family's been here for over 300 years. I live here, so I do benefit. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm being honest. We do.
I get you, bro. Like, I'm American. Now, over the last couple of years, I have a problem with the word patriot. What the fuck does a patriot really mean? To me, now, and people could probably say that I'm dead wrong, but when I hear the word patriot, I hear someone that is fine with all the bullshit that our government commits in Latin America or throughout the world, or these false flags. You are condoning the American Empire's regime's false flags. You're cool with it by calling yourself a patriot. That
Well, look at El Salvador
some people may
now.
say that I'm wrong with that, but that's the way I view it.
Well, look at El Salvador now. I mean, this Council for National Policy ran death squads in the 1980s, and the current president of El Salvador, who I always I always mispronounce his name, Nayib Bukele. They're arresting people with no due process and putting them in prison and trying them later. You know, I mean, literally, you're having the police state being brought here to America, and Alex Jones is cheering the cops. Remember when he used to be against the cops, the whole CMP psyop that Alex Jones is?
That dude is a
And he's
shill,
cheering the
bro.
cops on down, you know?
That dude is a controlled opposition.
Now, my final question I wanted to ask you is this.
Oh, I'm sorry, man.
No, I just don't want to
see, we do have so much more in common. I'm glad, even though I went on a rant there, it just shows that we do have way more in common than we disagree on.
Now, I would argue Christianity is what matters, brother. But
Christianity is what?
Is what matters. The difference that we do have is
and that's
what
what
matters.
And that's our biggest disagreement.
But it doesn't mean we can't have discussions. It doesn't mean we can't talk. You know, obviously. Is this? Let's say that Christian eschatology. Let's say that we are entering in the end times. Okay, which I do believe that we are. Yeah, I do believe that we are. Okay.
Copy.
And let's say that it starts playing out. That there does start become supernatural proof that God does exist, that the miracles do return in mass. What have you hardened your heart so much towards God that you're just like, oh, well, I'll take the mark. I'll serve the New World Order. I'll go to hell.
There's so many, and I don't mean this in a derogatory or disrespectful way, but there's so many holes to that question. I mean, first of all, one of the failed prophecies from Jesus was that he would return within the lifetime of his disciples. 2,000 years later, he hasn't showed up. So there's that hole there. And yeah, when I look at the constant contradictions, the failed prophecies, the so many incorrections, you know, when they edited the Bible and pieces that should have been put in here and were put in there, like the editing is all wrong. And there's the oldest Bible in existence is from the year 400 AD. So how many efferys were done during those 400 years of assembling this quote unquote final scripture? How many of these scrolls and scriptures did not make the cut? And why didn't they make the cut? What made it? What was contained within these scriptures that made them not make the cut? What if those were the true scriptures? And because the Catholic Church, as we know, is very corrupt, purposely.
Well, I mean, I would argue that you could take the writings of the Christian apologists before the formation of the Catholic Church, and you can make up, I think, roughly between 95 to 98% of the New Testament just from their quotations. So I would argue that, and again, you would line up, you know, you would say there's parts of the New Testament that contradict each other. I would say they don't. You know, but you again, like you can, if I just had all the works of the apologetic works of the early Christian apologetics, I can restructure the New Testament. Like it's pretty clear that majority of how the canonization of the Bible happened, and most people say it happened at the Council of Nicaea, which is simply not true. You know, again, it's, do we believe that the person, you know, who is ascribed to have written the books of the Bible that we ascribe them to, based off of you know, early church history, and based off of the tone and the grammar and the writing that these things are written, did they write it? And we also know too that during those time period as well that they would use scribes to write down certain letters as well too. Like when Paul was in prison, did he write them or did he have a scribe write them outside? Yeah, I mean this is another discussion. Okay, but like you can see in the tone and how the grammar and reflection are written. Like it's obvious that in my opinion, who wrote the Gospel of John, I think this is true, wrote First John, just by how it's written and how it's, the language of beloved, and love are used quite frequently through the Gospel of John and First John. I mean, it's John was known as a love disciple because of that. So, I do believe that the books that are in the Bible are in the Bible, because they're not pseudepigraphal, like the Gospel of Peter, for example, which was written 100 to 200 AD. Not the Gospel of Peter. I'm sorry. The Revelation of Peter, the Apocalypse of Peter. And so you also have the Gospel of Peter too, which we only have fragments from the early church, but we don't have it actually in its full itself. I misspoke there. I meant to say the Revelation or Apocalypse of Peter.
No, you're right, man.
And so I do think that again, why did they canonize the Bible? And I'm not trying to mock you there, but I mean that's a common. There's tons of evidence to show exactly why the Bible is structured the way it is, why it's set up the way it is, and why they came to that conclusion. Now, you reject that information, and at one time I did too, but I no longer do, because I have spent time, researching it. For example, I think the Epistle of Hebrews, or the Book of Hebrews, should I say, it's usually attributed to Paul, and I think Paul may have written it, but I also think it's possible that Barnabas might have written it too as well. Because if you read the Epistle of Barnabas, it sounds very similar. And again, the Epistle of Barnabas, though, I think there's some truth in it. I really do, and I do think it was written by Barnabas. There are one or two errors, and it's the reason why I don't think that it's canonized as scripture. And so, I do think there is a long study on that. There's been many books written that, there are certain non-Christian scholars, like Bart Ehrman, for example, who Bart Ehrman, should I say, out of the University of Chapel Hill, who I'm not a fan of. I do think he's Rockefeller funded in a lot of ways. So is Elaine Pagels, the Gnostic scholar, who I used to have complete 100% belief in. That was a reputable scholar, Elaine Pagels. Bart Ehrman believes that there was a historical Jesus Christ, right? There are a few scholars, there are very few scholars that actually don't believe that Jesus exists as a historical person. That being said, though, that is me trying to appeal to authority there, so I can't really use it. I can just state it, as such. And it may or may not be true, but I do believe that, Jesus is historical. I do believe he is the Son of God, So, I don't know. I believe that, again, it gets to my answer. I guess my final question is if everything let's say that the Bible is correct and accurate. Okay. When you talk about this generation, I believe there's a dual fulfillment, right? But that's a whole other discussion. Destruction of the temple in 72 AD and the further destruction of the third temple. Okay. Let's put all that from the side again, and let's say that what is foretold in Scripture as far as the end times, whether it's through Daniel, whether it's through the minor prophets, whether it's through Jesus's teachings about it, whether it's through Paul's epistles, Peter's epistles, and Revelation. What if they really are becoming true? What if the two witnesses appear? What if and I know I'm doing what about is, but I'm just asking you, like, what if your knowledge of Revelation, what you have read, starts coming true to your own eyes? What will you do then?
This, what you're posing right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's basically a question of, what if there is a God? Would you believe, would you believe in God then? Like, is that what you're asking?
Yes, but I'm putting it more in a practical
So
more practical case of, because you say that, I guess I could make the argument simple as well, what if God appeared to himself now and he made himself known to you? And I would argue he's made
would
himself
I
known.
would I bend the knee? I mean, if I don't know if that's not your
Would you be
entire
like
question, but
Job, and would you bend the knee?
I would not bend my knee. I would say, holy shit, the Abraham God is real. Would I pray to him and proclaim him? No, because of the aforementioned atrocities committed, because
But
of
that
the
would mean the Bible, like,
aforementioned inactivity
if
to cure cancer, to help kids from not starving in third world countries.
but again, is
So
that
hell no, I
but
would
again,
not bend my knee. I'm like, holy shit, he exists, but
but
no,
is that an argument of emotionality at that point, though? From logic to
it could be,
emotionality.
but I'm just telling you the truth. So let's say this is why when it comes to the Abrahamic religion, doesn't matter if it's Judaism, Islamism, Christianity isms, whatever isms you want to, I'd leave open for the possibility of a higher power, but I definitively, without any question, cross out the Abrahamic religions.
So you harden your heart like Pharaoh, and God
Hell
finished the
yeah.
deal by giving
Maybe
you a
God
reprobate
hardened
mind.
my heart.
No,
Maybe God
second,
hardened my
he
heart.
gave you a reprobate mind after you hardened your heart first, brother. That's all I'm saying about that.
Maybe God hardened it for me. He's like,
But
and
again, so is that okay? Let's go even further. Let's say that what I believe is to be true, that Trump's the Antichrist, and he brings in the mark of the beast. You will take that to eat and to survive and
I
to
seen this
thrive.
guy, Donnie Darkened. I think he's on Twitter. Donnie Darkened talks a lot about Trump being the Antichrist. Some of the shit that Donnie Darken says, I can get behind with, but other stuff, I'm like, dude,
I don't agree with
like,
everything Donnie Darkin puts forth either.
yeah.
He's on my short list for being the Antichrist. I'm not for sure that he is yet.
I can't stand Donald Trump. Anyone that's following me, I should talk shit about him. And my biggest beef with Donald Trump is his Jeff Epstein ties, which Trumpers will make excuses left and right. Oh, but this, but that. Oh, it's because he was playing 69 dimensional chess. Oh, it's all this bullshit. It's buffoonery. He was on the flight log 7 fucking times. Donald Trump owns his own plane, and yet he had to fly on Jeff Epstein's plane 7 times.
RFK Jr. being just as much tied.
Exactly. And so, as much as I don't like Trump, do I think he's Antichrist? No. I just think he's another puppet, just like Biden. Who the hell believes Joe Biden is actually pulling the strings on these major calls? The dude shits his pants. He trips over his damn self all the damn time. The dude is old. He's a geriatric. He's a vegetable that just walks. And you want me to believe this guy's making all the calls? They're all puppets. It doesn't matter if it's Biden or Trump. That's the way I look at it. So as far as Donald Trump being an Antichrist, I don't ascribe to it. I think he's a puppet 100%.
If he is the Antichrist, or the Antichrist comes, but let's say it's Donald Trump because he's a horrific human being. Okay. Let's say it's Elon Musk. Okay.
Yeah. Brain chips.
And again, they're gonna, through the new age, because Alice Bailey says in 2025 the externalization of the hierarchy occurs. Okay, she wrote that in when she wrote a collection of essays for externalization of hierarchy from the 1930s up to the 1945, 1950s or whatever, right? So what if you get a person will get everything they want, by taking the mark. They'll get through the Nassar-Gassar Great Financial Reset system, quantum financial system, they'll get access to a limited amount of money almost. You'll be healed through cancer through med beds. You just go into a med bed and you'll be instantly cured of any disease. Okay. Like these miracles will happen to anybody who takes the mark from the new world order, the beast system. Okay. And And again, not everyone marvels after the beast until they're resurrected. That's scripture. Most people are like, well, people hate Donald Trump now. Bible says people really don't follow the Antichrist until after he's resurrected by a false prophet. Okay. So, and again, if Elon Musk's the false prophet, could it be putting a Neuralink in Trump's brain? Yeah, because I believe the image of the beast is AI. Okay. So if that's the case, then, and you're seeing this play out, you're seeing biblical prophecy play out, are you either, and I hate this for you, because God wishes for none to perish and for all to come to eternal life. I'm the same. Okay. In your hardest of heart, would you either A, kill yourself to go to hell immediately, or B, would you take the mark to have pleasure knowing that you're damned forever? And I know that's an extremely tough question, and I know I'm putting you on the spot. But I'm honestly asking,
what was it? What was the second choice? I heard pleasure.
taking the
that
mark,
yeah.
but knowing you damn yourself in the process of taking the mark too. Instead of just accepting that Jesus Christ is the Messiah and he died for your sins and that God is real, the biblical God is real, and just accepting that maybe your preconceived notions are incorrect and you don't, like, again, I'm not going to say that I understand everything of God and I understand all the mysteries of God. If I did, I would tell you I'm lying. So I'm saying if Jesus and God are real and you're at that point in that crux where we are living in the end time, in spite in a wasted life,
it's not wasted though. Like,
it's wasted if you kill yourself, where you could be redeemed. It's your heart is so hard. Because I mean, think about it. I lost both my parents when I was young. I lost a son. Okay. I understand hard-hearted of hearts. I'm dealing with that with some of my own personal family members that are hard in their hearts against God because of things that have happened in their life. And then God, again, doesn't want someone to do that. Now, I know you don't, again, you don't believe he exists at all, period. And you definitely
no, because this is the same God that will kill you for picking up sticks on a Sunday. This is the same God that will kill you for the most benign reasons.
Picking up sticks on a Saturday would be the Sabbath.
Yeah,
working on a Sabbath.
Yeah.
But I mean,
God killed a man for picking up sticks. Do you not see why I'm laughing at that?
But again, the argument to that is you only know that brief instances of maybe that was the final thing. Maybe the grace had run out. Maybe the grace had run out.
Can you imagine in 2024, I walk up and I see this guy picking up some sticks and I put a cap in his ass? How the hell am I going to justify that shit?
All I'm just saying, the grace is in doubt. I don't know. Maybe.
What if
the guy had?
You have to see where I'm trying to get at, man.
What if the guy had just had throughout his life had raped 4 kids?
It didn't say that though. The Bible should have. You would think the Bible would say that.
Hold on.
This guy was a fucking pedophile picking up sticks, and that's why God put a cap in his ass.
Hold on. Logical fallacy. The evidence of absence is an absence of evidence. The picking up the stuff of the sticks on Sabbath, when someone does that, could be the final straw. That's all I'm saying.
Come on, man. Do you see how irrational that is? You have to.
Because you don't know the totality. You don't know the totality of the sins of in his life, Weezy. I mean, Paul was chief among sinners, brother.
All right.
So
agree to disagree. Do not pick up sticks on a Saturday,
people killed. Chief among sinners.
He was
redeemed.
I used to be a residential garbage man, and I used to pick up yard waste, so it was like debris. And sometimes we would have to work Saturdays. Like, oh shit, God might kill us today because we're picking up sticks on a Saturday.
He wouldn't kill you for picking up sticks on the Saturday because Jesus Christ is Lord of the Sabbath now.
No, I mean, I guess just to kind of end this and to answer your question. Again, knowing now what I know about God, a God that kills for picking up sticks on Saturdays, no, I would not bend the knee, and I am at peace with my decision. Like I told you, the final straw for me in losing my faith was when I lost my sister-in-law. That was the thing that pushed me over.
Was your
I'm like,
sister-in-law a believer?
I don't know. I don't know if she was. My mom was. My mom died suddenly. My mom was devout as fuck, and she died suddenly.
If she was a born-again believer, God took her. She's in heaven. She's no longer suffering.
Fuck that shit. I want my mom here.
I want my parents here
See,
too, but I'll
that
see
doesn't bring me
them.
comfort, man. Like I'm not mad at you.
Again, I'm not trying to bring you. I'm just stating
It
what I
doesn't.
believe.
I want my mom. She was in her early 60s, bro. Early 60s.
My father was in his 50s. My mom was in her late 30s.
So, like, when I hear this stuff, like, she's probably with God in heaven. I don't care about that. Where was God? Why did God take her then to begin with? If that's the truth. See, but then again, people confuse that emotion that
Can't live forever. We can't live forever, brother.
Why not?
Not in this mortal life.
Fucking Moses. How old was Noah?
Not in this mortal life that we have right now. This sinful fallen flesh bag that we have.
Yeah, but how old was Noah? He was in his 900s.
But that's the degradation of genetics from a non-evolutionary standpoint. That we're not getting better through the survival of the fittest. We're getting worse.
All right. I'm not even gonna argue that. I mean, 900 years old. Come on, man.
Hey, we're getting worse. I'm just saying. You know, we were more perfected creatures. We were more perfected creatures back then than we are now. So there's been degradation in the gene pool, which we are getting worse genetically. We are getting worse genetically. Evolutionists can't explain that one. So
yeah, like I don't know. At the end of the day, I know you come from a good place in your heart. I know it. I'm not even questioning that, John. And I hope you understand that even though I don't have any belief, I'm coming from an honest place. This is how I truly believe. I
believe this is how you truly believe.
Yeah.
But I do believe the experiences of your life and how you dealt with those experiences and vice versa for me is where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah. Your path has taken you right where you're at. My path has taken me to this juncture in my life. 100%. I 100% agree with that, man. It's
I do mean this. I will keep you in my prayers. I will.
Yeah, my dad prays for me every day. My mom, one of the last conversations, she told me she loved me. She prays for me that we had. And that's the only thing that gives me peace, even though I lost her suddenly, was I did tell her that I loved her, you know. I don't know, like
I didn't get that with some of my family members.
Yeah, it's rough, man. It's rough. And so for my dad, that gives him comfort through this time that he is in this heaven, this, the biblical sense or whatever. For me, I don't know. I don't know if there's an afterlife or not.
Hold on, let me ask you this. You wouldn't soften your heart at all towards God if he is real, in the hope that you could be with your mother and your father in heaven for all eternity? You wouldn't soften your heart if they're true born again believers. You would rather cause them grief just because you're that spiteful.
I wouldn't cause them grief. I mean, if this God that you're presenting right now, he's a prankster. I mean, this is the God that told Abraham to sacrifice his son and then says, just kidding, LOL.
It's a little oversimplification of what happened, but
just because I added the LOL part. Sorry, man. I am a little. Sorry, man. I shouldn't have been. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. It's just that's the way I interpret it. It's just there's too much. I've seen too much. I don't know if I ever finished my thought. I think I went on a different tangent, but real quick, when I had Billy on, trying to talk to someone about my stance to a believer such as yourself or my dad or whatever, it's hard to do. And to help Billy Ray understand my point of view is it's kind of like us in the conspiracy world trying to talk to someone that 100% believes in the official narrative. It's super tough to do because they don't get where you're coming from. They don't understand it. All they know is the official narrative, and that's
But there
it.
is a truth, right?
There is a
Objective
truth.
truth.
100%.
So again, I guess in closing, I argue, but if God is the objective truth of the universe and he exists and Jesus Christ is the Messiah and the Bible is correct, it is God's word. Again, you would reject that. I mean, you would reject that truth just because
of the flimsy evidence for it.
But I'm saying, what if it's direct? I mean, like we are living through the end times. It is directly in front of you.
Yeah.
So then when it boiled down to emotionality and hard to see heart at that point.
I'm 40 years old. I'm 41. I've gone 41 years old. And where the hell was God this whole time?
He's always been there.
Hey,
He's
you're going to show up
there.
at the 2-minute warning. Hey guys, all right, guys, I'm going to rally you up. Let's freaking go. Like, I don't, that's why.
He's always been there and he's there now.
Why does it make it so hard? Like,
because the road to destruction is broad and the path to salvation is narrow, brother.
Right now, we've been speaking for nearly over 3.5 hours now. Why, at this minute, and it doesn't please me to say this, but during this time, how many kids have died across the world due to starvation in third world countries? Why hasn't God done any of that shit? With just the snap of his fingers, he could stop that, and he's nowhere to be found.
Well, eventually, you know,
it doesn't. If you've died of starvation in the last hour, this eventually doesn't mean shit to you.
But in the grand scheme of things, it does mean.
What do you mean in the grand scheme of things?
That's what I mean. In that there are children who die. If God is real and there is a heaven and there's an afterlife, and
these are innocent kids.
Yes, but that doesn't necessarily mean in the fallen state of the world that we live in that again to an eternity, suffering is short, is it not?
I guess this is kind of where. And it goes back to your final question. These kind of answers don't pass this smell test. I mean, you're saying what if bend the knee? To me, I guess I could reverse the question back to you. What if there is no God? This life is indeed finite.
Then believing in God
then
and Holy
I
Spirit
enjoy
and Jesus,
it to the.
I am a better person denying myself, because before I know Jesus, I was a white nationalist. Before I knew Jesus, I had hate in my heart and anger in my heart. Before I knew Jesus, I had lust in my heart as well too. I am not the father and the man and the husband I am today without Jesus Christ as my Messiah. And through the Holy Spirit, I've been supernaturally changed. And I know you don't believe that, but I'm here to testify.
I believe you, bro.
True.
I believe you. I think religion has its place. I'm not someone that's anti-religion. My dad, as hardcore of a Catholic he is, I remember him. I was a small child at the time. He was abusive and he was a drunkard. And one of the earliest memories that I have, and it means a lot to me now that I lost my mom recently, was my mom taking us kids and basically telling my abusive, drunken dads, fuck you, I'm out of your life. And my dad credits God to changing his life. From that moment on, he knew that my mom was dead serious on leaving his ass. And that's when he bent the knee and became from one extreme, a drunken, woman beating alcoholic, to all of a sudden an extremist Christian Catholic fucking crusader. So he went from one extreme to the other extreme, and it worked out for him, no doubt. And for you to be here and say that you were at one point a white nationalist, and now you are, dude, 100% respect to that, man. And you hold Billy Ray as a homie. We just met, man, and I esteem you, even though we have this huge ideological divide. I esteem you. Whether
Well, I
you,
believe we're all made in God's image. I believe we're all children of God. Now,
I
those who are
believe
born
we're
again
all
are
just
adopted, are
yeah.
adopted sons and daughters of God. It's different. But I believe that I completely
We're all
changed.
humans, bro. We're all human. See, this is one thing I always say, man. We may look different. Maybe we have some cultural differences and shit, but we're all the same, man. We have assholes in every race, culture, color, and creed. We have good ass people in every race, culture, or creed. We're the same, man. And that's what I try to promote in my show, man. Is at the end of the day, we're all the same, man, and we all have to unite against this world order, because this is where it goes back to this fundamental question. Like, I feel division does more in dividing people than it does uniting people, and that's what governments prey upon. They love when we're constantly at each other's throats, whether it's Republicans, Democrats, pro-Ukraine war funders and pro-Israel funders, they pro-open borders or against the border. It doesn't matter. They love these divisions. These divisions is what fuels them. And if we can unite and put some of these differences to the side at certain points, I think that's the solution to all of these world's problems. It's not, and you may say it's faith in Jesus Christ alone. And
Yes, I believe that. Yes.
Yeah, and I believe,
because I believe that you're going to see that ecumenicalism through the beast system, the universalism you're talking about, the uniting of the world, the Great Awakening. If we are living in the end times and my grand unified theory of the Great Awakening is correct, mark my words, that will happen, and it won't be a good thing. It'll be a satanic thing. Sorry.
I get you. Look, here's someone writing, Christ brings a sword. Like a seed, the human body must die for it to grow. If you have faith in the Lord, then you are a viable seed. Yeah, man, I completely, kind of like I stated just not too long ago, trying to explain my worldview is very tough for the average believer or person of faith to understand. It's a foreign concept. How the hell can you not believe in God? I used to believe that way.
It's not foreign to me. I know plenty of people that don't believe in God. You're not the first.
No, I'm not saying, but to understand the actual feeling of it, not knowing people. I'm just, the point of view is what I'm trying to get at. Until you fully understand it, it's a foreign concept.
It's not foreign.
It's kind of like
okay. After my dad died, it was when I don't think I was born again, obviously, but I actually denied God after that for a while. So it's not a foreign concept to me. It's not. I'm sorry. It just isn't. Yeah. It was at least a year. It's at least a year.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I went more towards New Ageism and Universalism after that. It took a while, but I was on that agnostic fence. I denied God. I remember I said it to my grandpa. I said, my grandparents. To this day, I remember I said, God does not exist. Why would God do this? Why would God take my dad away from me? I was there, man. I was there.
Here's someone. Look at this guy. Wesley Curry II says, you are like a cut off head in a square pit, missing half your brains, alive seeking death, moving none when it comes to your biblical knowledge.
Well, I guess I guess I'm I don't know how I'm alive with half my brain missing.
Yeah, me neither.
Um,
Apparently,
What part? What part?
I think he's talking about me. That's hilarious.
Oh,
Um,
well.
yeah, yeah. I don't think he's talking about you. I think he's talking
Well,
about
if he's
me.
talking about you, I believe that you have a full working brain.
A full fourth.
No, a full complete working brain.
I thought you said a full.
A hardened
full
heart,
fourth.
a hardened heart. Your heart is stone, but a working brain. Now, how a stone heart beats, I
How
don't
do you
know.
know God didn't harden my heart like he did Pharaoh's?
Because I believe you.
Pharaoh's probably a
Again,
kick-ass dude, man. and he
again,
hardened his heart.
Pharaoh, for him first, then God. Okay, so
John, man, I truly, let's see, you mean there is as many as one person on YouTube. Anyways, John, remind people where they can find you.
yeah, Weezy,
It was
you can find
truly
me.
a pleasure to have you, man.
We've read the documents on Odyssey. We've read the documents on Substack. I'm posting my Finder's book. I'm working to try to finally get it out. It's been years in the making. We've _read on Twitter. We've read on Gorf Social. I don't know how long I'll be on any of these platforms. I've enjoyed this, brother. I've had it's been. I mean, yes,
Food
we
for thought,
disagree.
man.
Obviously, I believe Jesus Christ is the only way, the way, the truth, and the life. But I
Yeah.
still, again, it doesn't mean that we can't have these discussions. It doesn't mean that we can't talk.
And
You know,
I'm grateful that you are open to that because, like I said, it's a tough conversation to have, and sometimes when I bring up some of the things I bring up, it angers people, and I wasn't trying to anger you. That's why I wanted you to clarify on that low tier argument.
I still think that's a
wanted
low
you-
tier atheist argument. That's heard. But again, you would argue that there's probably some low tier biblical arguments that I'm making as well too. You know,
Yeah.
which I would
I think
disagree
it
with.
goes both ways, and I think this turned out not to really be a debate. It was more of a discussion.
Well, that's what I thought it was always going to be in the first place.
I did too, man. I had faith that it would turn out this way.
Don't have your faith in man, your faith only in God, brother. But I mean, definitely, you know, I actually, when we talk about Epstein, I also like to talk about the Council for National Policy, which most people don't
About
even
what?
know.
Say that.
The Council for National Policy, which is the right wing version of the CFR, that most
Yeah.
people that controls
Let's
the truth
do it,
movement
bro.
and has no
Let's
idea
get
about it.
together after the show and
Sounds good.
try to nail down some dates and get you on. I usually can only do like around this time on Saturdays.
Most Saturdays I'll
because
be able to
I
come
work.
earlier. I would be able to. I had extenuating circumstances that I talked about at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
But most Saturdays I'm free. You know, as long as there's enough advance and everything like that, I could definitely
Let's
make
do it, bro. Hell yeah. Let this be a start of an awesome, friendly relationship, man. That'd be awesome. Thank you so much, man. I put your link tree in the description, so check them out, y'all. I am also on Odyssey, so Odyssey is really the last bastion for free speech, it seems. But unfortunately, it's not as big as a lot of these other platforms.
for now.
Yeah, for now.
Do you want me to
yes.
stay on or do you want me to leave?
Well, I'll message you. Yeah, I'll message you and I'll just
Okay.
shut it off because
I'll give you my
we're-
phone number as well too. So we'll just
yeah,
you
man,
pop
let's
off
do
here.
it.
So all right,
My brother,
have a good evening,
thank
everybody.
you so much, my man.
God bless. Bye.
All right, man. Take care. All right, y'all. That was John Brisson of We've Read the Documents. Find him on Twitter. Linktree is in the description. So if you don't know what a Linktree is, just hit that link and it pops up all his links, whether he's on YouTube, Odyssey, whatever it may be. So definitely check it out. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I enjoyed that very much. Good dude. We definitely have some theological differences. This person right here is a militant Christian right here. Christ, their name, for those audio listeners, they're on YouTube. Their name says, Christ brings a sword. Their comment is, if you have no savior, then there is no life. Then they wrote another comment. They're trying to get my attention, so I'll give them attention. They wrote another comment saying, without a savior, you face the judge. Dude, with the name of Christ brings a sword, You're basically a Christian jihadist, and you don't even realize it. And I have a Bible verse for that too. I think it's in Luke. I think it's Luke 18:27. I need to double check. Hold up. Luke. Oh shit, that wasn't it. It's been a while since I used to have all these. I had a lot of these Bible quotes memorized. Knew them damn good. And a lot of the reason why I had them memorized was because I read the Bible and I wanted answers. I wanted them to make sense. They never did. And that's why I'm at this point in my life. Missy chapter 1 verse 1 says, "Good night, everyone." What a lovely human being. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope everyone has a good night. And I really loved how John was. We had a great conversation. We definitely disagreed, and when it comes to religion, at least, pretty much everything. But it was awesome. It was great. Loved his attitude. Great dude, man. Seems like a humble guy. Billy Ray spoke highly of him, and he came through, didn't disappoint. So much love to that guy. Let's see. The trouble with gospel is they are different accounts. They are all different accounts of. Yep, I agree. Anyways, I enjoyed my discussion with my What is Truth Tumblr. It was a exquisite experience. All right, y'all. Hope you guys are awesome. I'm trying to think of the outro. What outro should I do? Go with this one. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for the love and support. Show grows little by little, but it grows. So please share it if you enjoy this and have like-minded friends. Sending love, hugs, hey.